Chapter 201 Anson took out his wand. Eternal flame, whether you are underwater or on the ground, can not only burn regardless of the environment, but can even burn the souls of living beings. And, to a certain extent, it will never go out. Flames swish on several large stands temporarily set up in the Black Lake. Everyone saw that the water directly turned red under the Black Lake, which should have been dark and dark. Moreover, the surface of the water is gurgling. This is heat. Incredible. What's going on down there? Anson fighting? Professor McGonagall said worriedly. Professor Dumbledore, are we going to go down and take a look? Karkaroff snorted coldly. Professor McGonagall, there can be no outside interference in the Triwizard Tournament. This is the rule, and you don't want to shame Hogwarts, right? The giantess Maxim also nodded. 050. Your academy has 2 more people to participate, and I hope you can ensure the fairness of the competition. But Old Deng shook his head. Okay, Professor McGonagall. Trust Anson, you know his strength. McGonagall sighed. Just because I know her, I will worry, and if I want her to say, no matter what kind of competition he has, whoever wants to hurt my students under the nose of the old lady, don't blame her for being ruthless. At this point, she is pure. Rumble. A column of water rose into the sky, at least 10 meters high. You can see how fierce the battle below will be. Fleur, it's over. My sister is still below. His face was full of bitterness. If something happened to her sister down there, she didn't know what to do when she went back. Harry couldn't help but say a few words of comfort when he heard this. It's probably something to worry about. Ron asked curiously, what's down there? It's nothing. I only see some mermaids and nothing outside of the building. It stands to reason that Anson's strength can't come out so slowly. Cedric interjected. Unless he sees something funny. Next to Cedric stood Wanda. They were the men of the cooing army, and Wanda knew Anson better than they did. If so, it seems that it is indeed possible. At the moment, underwater, the giant squid did not struggle after being burned by the eternal flame several times in a row, and when Anson wanted to continue to do it, the voice of the giant squid appeared in Anson's mind. Young wizard, you have passed my test, and you are eligible to inherit the Gryffindor treasure. Finish speaking. A beam of light emitted from the huge head of the giant squid, and what should have been an ancient building silent under the water suddenly glowed brightly. Anson could see that this should be a spell that could isolate seawater, or rather, it's a door. And Hermione and Fleur's sister were still hanging on the huge pillar at the moment. There are some confused mermaids around. Shall we go up? You go? I'm not going. Even the giant squid is not the opponent of that wizard. I definitely can't fight. I'm not feeling well today. What did Dunbledo ask us for? Go if you want to die. A group of ugly mermaids dissipated. Anson came over, and the giant squid followed. The words were quite emotional. I have been ordered to guard the Gryffindor treasure at Hogwarts for 1,000 years, and you are the first wizard to meet his conditions, and you are very good. I'm curious what the conditions are. Physical strength. Physical strength? This is somewhat similar to Anson's impression of Gryffindor himself. Gryffindor is different from regular wizards. If I had to locate him, he was the Gandalf of the wizarding world. Nickname, Melee Mage. A character with a wand in one hand and a sword in the other. He will be hard steel when he encounters enemies. It is also the only known melee mage in the past 1,000 years. Originally, Anson guessed that he might just be a descendant of wizards with some mysterious bloodline, such as Hagrid, such as Maxim, the giantess headmaster from Xpitons. If their bodies were to be developed intentionally, they would far surpass human wizards. For example, Hagrid's original play once hit the drill heart curse, and although it was painful, there was no sequel. Closing parenthesis. It's just like ordinary people getting a cold. You must know that Neville's parents were driven crazy by a few drill spells, and you can see some of Hagrid's differences from regular wizards. Not to mention that Hagrid also went to Azkaban in the original show, and the Dementors will not stop sucking Hagrid just because of where he came from. But he came out and there was nothing unusual. Although Harry also suffered from the drill heart curse in the original play, it was quickly lifted and cannot be compared. Up Zero, with a flick of her wand, Hermione and Fleur's sister quickly ran under the water and disappeared. Anson could faintly hear loud cheers coming from the water. After thinking about it, the white dragon-shaped guardian appeared and flew up. McGonagall. Look, that's Anson's patroness. The patron saint came to Old Deng and whispered a few words before disappearing, and Dumbledo was surprised and laughed. Don't worry, Anson is fine. It's good to have it. Although Anson was the last to rescue his classmates, but he helped others, so I think I can add points for this. This time, for the first time, Slytherin felt that Old Dun's bonus skills were so wise. Underwater, the giant squid has headed for the ocean, and it says that its mission has been completed and that it will probably not return. Later Anson heard that this guy once tied up a huge cruise ship at sea. In the Gryffindor treasure, Anson had just entered the aperture when he saw a huge statue standing in front of him, very smelly, with a wand in one hand and a sword in the other. The style of the sword is very similar to the Gryffindor sword at Hogwarts today. In the innermost part, there is nothing but basic magic books. Open it and see, it's some magic notes. To Anson's surprise, Gryffindor's physical toughness. Unexpectedly, I found a way to extract the magic rules from magical animals. Deeply surprised. It's a pity, if he can continue to study, he may not be able to live forever. Like the Phoenix in Gryffindor's 3.6 research notes, it is also obvious that the magic rules he obtained were extracted from the trolls, and not completely. Also, not everyone has the same true eye as him. However, what surprised Anson even more was some Gryffindor's conjecture. The world is not complete. According to Gryffindor's guess, goblins suddenly appeared in the wizarding world. So where did they come from? In other words, there are still secrets in the wizarding world that wizards have not discovered. Anson knows this. The sword of the king can open the way to enter this place, and if he guesses correctly, that place should have been forcibly separated from this world, and King Arthur's death may also be because of that place. Otherwise, it would not be possible to leave Anson to discover the secret. Chapter 202. When Anson appeared, all the wizards wondered what was going on under the Black Lake. After all, it was impossible for them not to be curious about the spell that could dye the lake red. With the strength of everyone present, the only person who can use Anson under the water is Dunbledo. Are you alright? Dumbledo asked gently. Anson nodded. I found something. Professor, this is for you. There are no good things about the books on Gryffindor's lab notes, and if there is, there are only some Gryffindor fighting experience. Dunbledo was surprised. I didn't expect it to be this thing. Hogwarts not only has the Chamber of Slytherin, a legacy left by Slytherin that was later found by Voldemort, and Gryffindor and the other founders also left their knowledge at Hogwarts. But alas, no one has ever found it for so many years. Even if it's him. Now that Anson has found the treasure of Gryffindor, the little wizards who know about it are hot, and they have threatened to find the treasure left by the other founders. Oh, for may Merlin bless them. What? Gryffindor's treasure? Luna opened her mouth wide. Wanda was also curious. Very powerful? Anson nodded. You have also inscribed that the dragon rules have become stronger, and you know its specific role, and Gryffindor should have been initially involved in the existence of magic rules. Hiss. Several little guys glanced at each other and gasped. That's amazing. In the entire wizarding world, since Anson announced the existence of magic rules, some wizards have gone to find magic rules and found magic rules. But the result? None of them could find it. According to Anson, without the true eye, wizards may not be able to intuitively detect the existence of magical rules and its tangible graphics. In this way, it is not too difficult to say that it is as difficult as heaven. Ginny said carefully, then according to this logic, the Big Four really have left their legacy in Hogwarts? Everyone subconsciously looked at Anson, smiled and nodded. Really? Well, you know the Slytherin Chamber of Secrets, the Gryffindor treasure was also found by me. As for the Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff treasure, Anson paused. I guess it should be in the library and restaurant. The restaurant where the elves cook? Ron opened his mouth wide. You know, Hufflepuff students didn't go in to find something to eat. And the library is even more. Hermione, as the only student in the small team, is often immersed in it. Not to mention that libraries have no restrictions on professors. If there is something abnormal, it is impossible not to know, right? If it's so easy to find, it's still called a treasure? The crowd was dumbfounded. For example, the treasure of Gryffindor is under the Black Lake. Who would think of going under the Black Lake? Harry, Anson, do you know what to do about the third level? The third level? Then there is a play. The Death Eaters have gone to such great lengths to promote the opening of the Triwizard Tournament, and the only possibility is the same as in the original play. Make the key items of the third level into a door key. Anyway, there are quite a few Death Eaters in Hogwarts now, and it's still easy to do something. It's okay, just feel free. Ron patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry, anyway, with Anson, you are not in danger. Also, Harry could only nod. It is useless for him to think more now. Before the third level opened, a grand banquet was held at Hogwarts. Anson didn't go. Later, according to a Weasley, who did not want to be named, many people were waiting to invite Anson to dance. Of course, please ignore that the narrator seems to have no dance partner. The third level begins. At the edge of the other end of the Forbidden Forest, huge walls of vines were arranged, crisscrossing and even being enchanted to move on their own. Once contestants are forced into corners by a tree wall, they stick out vines to trap them. Severe cases can even cause death. So Old Deng said solemnly, if you feel that you can't handle it, then use your wand to shine red into the sky, and we will have someone patrolling around to ensure your safety. After patting Harry's shoulder, he glanced at Anson. The corners of the mouth are slightly raised. Can't wait. Closing parenthesis 5 people entered through different entrances. The dim and misty interior was not very comfortable, and the rustle of vines crawling could be faintly heard. It's weird. It is as if you are in the body of some kind of giant animal, which gives people a sense of unease. Anson paused and lifted his foot to the side. After a few minutes, he suddenly stopped. Come out. Crumb came out from behind the vine with his wand in hand. Very alert, worthy of being known as the most outstanding little wizard of our time. You've been following me and want to say this? Crumb shook his head proudly. Of course not, it's just a pity for you. But if you die, will the Pendra family still exist? Anson looked up. The banter in the eyes is obvious. As if looking at a clown, how did he feel that he alone could solve himself? Voldemort didn't dare to say that. Of course, It is also possible that he was not a Death Eater. Then all that is left is the one who has been hit by the Pendra family industry and is close to extinction. Pureblood nobles? You dare to make a move on me? Crumb smiled. If you die in it, no one will know anything. 313. Perhaps, it is a dark wizard, a Death Eater. After all, those people are just crazy. Then what are you waiting for? Crumb saw that Anson was unmoved, and he who should have been calm was a little skeptical, whether there would be any problems. Except for your weapons. Harry came out of Crumb's side with his wand in his hand, and caught Crumb's wand that he had disarmed him. Anson, are you all right? While shouting, Anson shook his head helplessly. I said, Harry, you won't know what you're wearing, right? Harry was stunned. Scratched his head. This is the latest dragon skin magic robe, which claims to be a magic item that cannot kill a wizard with one hit. I am also in a hurry. Past. Escorted Crumb over. Anson, what should he do? Just put it here. Deal with him later. Now I think we should. Hey, Cedric? In the corner, Cedric reappeared. Hey, Harry, Anson, I think I showed up just at the right time. All but Fleur arrived. Are you going to look at the sky? I'm going to meet the people behind it. Cedric directly refused. Watching classmates wade into danger without helping is not Hufflepuff style. Cedric pulled out his wand. Chapter 203. Seeing the burning eyes of the two, it was difficult for them to help. Cedric is also in this calculation. Harry must also be in this calculation. If he does not follow him, he may be sent away. Save the hassle. Shout. Boom. A red spark appeared in the sky. Harry was surprised. It should be Fleur. I didn't expect her to give up so quickly, and it was only a few minutes since she came in. Is the maze so terrifying? All petrified. Crumb immediately stood sluggish and hard. Fire a spark with his wand. Harry did so, and after doing so, the three of them walked directly towards the depths of the maze. Under the real eye, the vines in the maze can never change the final position no matter how they change, which is still easy for Anson. End. The Triwizard Tournament winner's trophy is placed deep in the labyrinth, faintly glowing. This thing should have been cast on the Dortos, that is, the pork charm. Once we touch it, it will be teleported away immediately. Do you still want to go? Harry and Cedric looked at each other. They all that nodded. If we pass, will we meet the Death Eaters? Harry couldn't help but ask. Well, maybe I'll see Voldemort again. Then I have no reason not to go. But Cedric, you can choose not to go. Cedric hesitated and said seriously, I'm a Hufflepuff. Laughed. The three grabbed the trophy at the same time. Whoosh! The three disappeared directly into the maze in the distortion, and when the light appeared, the three had already arrived at another place. To be exact, this should be the other end of the Forbidden Forest. It's not too far from the Magic Tower, but it's not close either. And there was a black-robed wizard holding a torch, looking at them with fierce and longing eyes, like a demon. The man who started the fight was Voldemort, who made the wizards of the Europa region tremble. Look who this is. This is not Anson, Pendra, the person who claims to make wizards great again. Now Tilda. Anson took out his wand and pulled the two little ones behind him. By the way, have you ever thought that I would appear here and I wanted to come? Not what you call what plan succeeded. Voldemort paused, immediately laughed. Ha ha ha. It's too late to say anything. Tonight, you will die here. As long as you die, the so-called Pendra family will disappear. By then, I think there will be no fewer enemies of yours. Anson still looked indifferent. Well, I'll take a look. The anti-phantom transfiguration spell, the forbidden spell, and some counterspell arrangements of conventional spells. It's good that you can use your brain. Presumptuous, how dare you speak to a great master like that? Hit a woman who walked out of the crowd. The wand in his hand is slightly bent. Bellatrix. This is Voldemort's most loyal lackey, known for his madness and ruthlessness. Voldemort opened his hand and looked around. One by one, the Death Eaters raised their wands and aimed them at the three small wizards in the middle, and the look in their eyes that examined their prey was extremely obvious. Anson, since you're so sure that you can kill me, then what are you waiting for? Enjoy the struggle of your prey before you die? Good. Voldemort nodded. You are indeed excellent. I admit that I have not seen a better wizard than you appear in so many years, but unfortunately, if you hadn't gone to the opposite side of me, maybe we could have created another, better wizarding future. Holding a magic wand, Avada nibbles on big melons. Suddenly shot. A green spell light appeared directly in front of Anson on the wand. Airplanes. Nourish. The dragon skin magic robe directly resisted the death spell. In the next second, Voldemort took a step back and looked at it in disbelief. It is unbelievable that the death charm cannot kill Anson. They know the existence of the dragon skin magic robe and naturally know its advantages. What shocked him was that the dragon skin magic robe he snatched from others was actually at the moment he attacked Anson. Damage out of thin air. Anson looked up. Just don't learn well, for people like you, wizarding science seems to be more difficult to understand. Then, hurry up. Avada nibbles on a big melon, falling apart, out of the body. Faint. Drill heart curse. Moment. The color light of the various spells rushed towards the three, and the entire venue was illuminated by the light of the spell. It's like daylight, and in the eyes of the Death Eaters, it seems that the scene of the death of the so-called members of the Pendra family has been seen. However, The next second something that shocked them even more happened. As soon as all the spell rays came into contact with the three of them, they all turned into bubbles. If anyone pays attention, they will find that the reality gem, one of the infinity stones hanging on Anson's chest, is shining. All the Death Eaters were silent for a second. Closing parenthesis immediately howled and cast the spell again. Anson's wand inlaid with the eternal flame and icebox was raised slightly. Apostrophe tilde cold ice. Swish. A cold wind blew out of thin air, and everywhere the cold current passed, whether it was trees and meadows, wizards and stones, they were all frozen in place, unable to move. Voldemort saw the cold current, and after unleashing a few spells at Anson, he was also retreating. But the Death Eaters were encouraged to continue their attack. Periphery. Madwoman Bella wrinkled her brows. Master, what kind of spell is this? I've never seen a spell so powerful. Voldemort grimaced coldly. Don't worry about here. What's going on over there? The so-called magic tower is already attacked, and there is little Barty in Hogwarts who is dealing with Dunbledo, and he will definitely die under the sneak attack. As for the Ministry of Magic in England, there are also our people who have shot, and after this evening, the entire wizarding world will be the masters. Voldemort nodded, quite relieved. In the Europa region, he gathered so many desperate wizards, and even forced, Zauzgood, so many wizards to do things under him. For this day, it's just that this Anson's strength is far more outrageous than the last time they passed. Especially this kind of power that can directly turn the spell of all of them into nothing. Horror. However, he brought so many people here to consume Anson's magic. How much magic can a minor wizard have? Even if Anson is strong, with the existence of the forbidden magic spell, it will kill him. It's a good calculation. If he knew what the Infinity Stones were, he probably wouldn't think so. In the crowd, Cedric had thought he was hanging just now, but if he hadn't seen a barrier in front of the three, all the spells would have turned into nothing. Not being is no better on the spot. What are we going to do? Harry's face showed a fierce look. Hit. Except for your weapons, shapes. Chapter 204. At the other end, at the entrance to the Triwizard Tournament maze, the spectators and wizards were still waiting here, and two people were brought out in succession, and the champion was already in Hogwarts' pocket without accident. In this way, the little wizards are even more excited. At this moment, Barty Jr. turned into this year's Defense Against the Dark Arts professor using a compound decoction, slowly approached Dunbledo. The wand was already in the hidden hand of the magic robe. There was a hint of pride and joy under his eyes. Proudly, a generation of great white magicians is about to die under his hands. Happily, he will be greater than Dunbledo. The feeling of achieving one's own greatness by destroying the greatness of others is wonderful. As he approached Dumbledore, he even heard Dumbledore talking to the wizards who had come to observe the Ministry of Magic. One raised. Just as he was about to cast a spell, a pair of huge palms suddenly stretched out from the side and firmly grabbed his hand, and even snatched his wand. Hagrid said coldly, "Accident, little Barty." Little Barty, watching the wizard with old Barty in it, watching this scene in disbelief. Little Barty couldn't care about anything when he saw the matter being revealed, and shouted behind him, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up!" Snape and Professor McGonagall were 993 first, and beside Karkaroff, Professor Flitwick pointed his wand at him that was so delicate that Ollivander sought to praise for his good maintenance. "Mr. Karkaroff, I think it's better for you not to use spells in front of a wizard fighting champion." Karkaroff. Moment. At least nearly 20 wizards were brought down or controlled by the professors of Hogwarts. McGonagall snorted coldly. "It's so inelegant. Really think that we can't teach wizard fighting?" Snape rolled his eyes. "Professor Dumbledore, it seems that there is also work over there. I need to go over." "Go ahead." Snape directly Phantom the Transfiguration disappeared. Dumbledore looked at Fudge and shook his head with a sigh. "Mr. Minister, it seems that today is your last day as Minister of Magic, and Voldemort promised you something to make you willing to take the Death Eaters into Hogwarts." Fudge smiled wryly and slowly became angry. "Promise? Ha ha ha. No, 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 you all thought wrong. Helpendra corrupted me little by little, pulling me into the trap he had already laid. Otherwise, Dunbledo, do you think you can really replace me in the Ministry of Magic?" "No way." Dunbledo snorted. "It seems that you want to take revenge on him, even if it is to enter Azkaban." "Azkaban?" Fudge sneered, and the wand came directly at him with a fatal spell. Under the green light, all beings are equal. And Fudge's last words before his death still echoed in everyone's ears. "Azkaban is also Anson's." "What do you mean?" The personnel of the International Magical Sports Division and other countries are still confused. "Is this change too fast?" Old Deng shouted. "All young wizards enter Hogwarts immediately, they are not allowed to go out, and all professors patrol the perimeter in case anyone enters the school." "What's that?" Ron pointed to the dense black shadows in the sky. "It's like a giant bat." The grass on one side was even frosting, and the temperature was plummeting after this thing appeared. "Dementors?" Hiss. "Aren't the Dementors unable to appear outside of Azkaban without the orders of the Ministry of Magic?" The walking wizards looked at Old Deng in disbelief. But this was not ordered by Dumbledo. Fudge's last words. "Azkaban is also Anson's power." The leader of the Dementors floated in front of Dumbledore, Guardian, Hogwarts. Dunbledo. Turning to look at the maze, Dumbledore shook his head and returned to the school with a sigh. Professor McGonagall pointed her wand at some of the figures on the Hogwarts building. Stone pier moving. Bang bang. A series of humanoid stone piers jumped from the wall. Professor McGonagall, the school is being invaded by foreign enemies, and I need you to carry out your duty to guard Hogwarts and repel all incoming enemies. This spell, it's really exciting. Look left and right, and it's a pity to find that there is no one. Novels. Just go to Fellow closing parenthesis. She had wanted to use this spell for a long time. Magic Tower. Arthur and Weasley looked down at the tower from time to time with their wands, looking worried. Lily and Snape were very relaxed. I said you guys are enough. I didn't see them all coming in. You're not worried? Worried about what? Since Mr. Pendra dared not set up any force here to let these Death Eaters attack, he must have considered it. Besides, worries are useful. Arthur nodded. I don't know what happened to them, Ron. Don't worry. Professor Dumbledore will be fine. He looked up at the growing number of Death Eaters gathered below. Frown. Arthur suddenly asked, you and Harry? That's what you think, but you better not say it, huh? The magic tower is launched. Airplanes. After a loud hum that resounded throughout the Forbidden Forest and Hogwarts, the Death Eaters outside, who were still attacking the magic tower, stood still. Suddenly, some huge wooden branches appeared on the outer eaves of the magic tower, and the entire magic tower seemed to turn into a hedgehog covered with tree stumps. Next second, dense magic rays appeared from the magic tower, and the wizard at the front was already beaten into flying ash before he could even react. Hiss. Arthur gasped. What kind of magic is this? Lily shook her head. It's not magic, but pure magic energy impact. It's just. What she couldn't figure out was that the magic tower was a dead thing. No matter how magical it was only a magic item at most. How could it automatically attack? And where does the energy come from? On the other side, the Ministry of Magic. Quirrell brought a wizard embroidered with the Pendra family logo into the Ministry of Magic, and outside, some of the Ministry's high-ranking homes were passed. Quirrell, Miss Umbridge, how's it going? All the people are being captured, and anyone who is not mixed with the Death Eaters will be captured, and those who have an affair with the Death Eaters will be killed, and it should be done in half an hour. Can't help but be excited. After tonight, she will be the master here. Don't make a mistake, you know, the master wants a complete Ministry of Magic. And what about the Department of Mysteries? Nothing was missing. Then go and do things. When the young master comes back, the Ministry of Magic is already ours. Chapter 205. The gaze returned to Anson's side. Nearly 10,000 Death Eaters took turns using spells on the three of Anson, but without exception, all the spells turned into foam 1 meter away in front of Anson. They could see an area obscured by foam. The three of them had nothing at all. Slowly, even Voldemort, who was waiting on the periphery, became a little anxious. Clutch your wand. The pale face revealed a bloodthirst and madness that was difficult to hide. He did not allow this man to live through today. Is there an arrangement of the forbidden spell? Master, everything has already been arranged, but Bella's face that pulled her hair was no longer calm. Do you want to attack the magic tower first? No, if we can't even kill him, then there is no point in solving his subordinates. Voldemort saw that the Death Eaters could not take down Anson, who was standing in the crowd. I couldn't help but take a few steps forward. Avada nibbles on a big melon. After the thick spell light directly broke up a piece of foam across hundreds of meters, a new bubble reappeared. But in the short gap, everyone finally saw the situation clearly. The three little wizards stood as if nothing had happened, and the closer to Anson, the more people were frozen in place. It's like a sculpture. All of them had a terrified expression on their faces. It was as if something horrible had happened before he died. Hiss. Some of the Death Eaters began to retreat, and Voldemort roared. Anson looked up. Go on. I can't do it. This spell of yours can always support you to use. I have more than 10,000 people here. How long can you hold out? Go on. Falling apart, except for your weapons. Raging fire. Drill heart curse. Avada nibbles on a big melon. Another series of spell outputs. Anson frowned slightly. Cedric asked carefully, Anson, what to do? This is what Anson does not want to see. Indeed, even with the Infinity Stones, he cannot use it for a long time, and there is a certain problem with this thing. However, there was no problem holding back the attack of these Death Eaters. After all he had to do was use one Infinity Stone. Even if he wanted to leave, he could leave here through the Space Gem, and the so-called Anti-Phantom Transfiguration spell was not good for Space Gems. At the heart of the matter was that he needed to drag Voldemort in this place. He could ignore Voldemort. His Wizarding Legion couldn't. What the? Directly fried Voldemort with the Infinity Stones? What if the Death Eaters ran away? Moreover, the Infinity Stones cannot be used in this way. Different Infinity Stones have different uses, and the power of other gemstones seems to need to be contacted, or the medium. After all, it is still necessary to leave all the Death Eaters, otherwise it will be a problem even if Anson completely dominates the wizarding world in the future. Frozen. Swish. The white cold current of energy once again appeared silently throughout the crowd, and one after another the Death Eaters were frozen into ice sculptures and stood in place. Those who were afraid and wanted to escape were directly solved by Voldemort's backhand. Their only option was to consume the spells that protected Anson through the so-called large number of spells. In this way, it is possible to survive and gain greater benefits and knowledge than ever before. Sure enough, Voldemort shouted, "As long as you kill him, I will share the knowledge of the Pendra family with you, and his wealth will be yours." Cool. Some people began to have red eyes. Outside the magic tower, as soon as Snape landed, he saw that the number of Death Eaters surrounding the magic tower exceeded at least tens of thousands. If it weren't for the constant attacks of the magic tower blocked the entry of these people. "I am afraid that the magic tower has been torn down into ruins. I'm anxious." A dragon roar began to be heard in the distance of the Forbidden Forest. Roar, roar, roar. What dragon? The Death Eaters looked up at the sky, which was exceptionally dark and cold under the dark night, except for the faint moon. Nothing can be seen at all. Why did the dragon come here? Something is wrong, and it is a large number of dragons. Could it be that the dragon in the dragon field escaped? Not waiting for the Death Eaters to react. The wizards who rode these dragons were none other than the First Wizard Legion, except for a small number of wizards who were taken by Quirrell to the Ministry of Magic to control the situation. Nearly 9,000 people were all here. Novels. Just go to Felu ride a dragon in the sky. The dragon flapped its wings and quickly approached, moving at high speed. Wands and technological energy weapons transformed from Wakanda were already set up on it. Fire. After one pass, explosions and fires suddenly sounded around the Forbidden Forest magic tower. Before the Death Eaters could react, the dragon with the wizards of the First Legion had already arrived above them, already disturbed by the huge wind of the dragon's flapping wings. The Death Eaters couldn't open their eyes. The spell suddenly poured down like rain. Hiss. Snape gasped. "Can you still fight like this?" At the same time, all the anti-phantom transfiguration spells around the Forbidden Forest were activated, and even some protective spells and forbidden magic arrays were being opened. On the magic tower, Lily watched as Snape hurried over. "Are you all right?" Lily shook her head. "I'm okay." "In school?" Arthur couldn't help but lean over when he heard this. Snape nodded. "Don't worry. They will be fine with Professor Dumbledo in the school, and Harry will be fine with Anson. You hear?" "I don't know. Maybe Mr. Pendra has his own considerations, and it should be fierce to look at outside." The corners of Snape's mouth twitched. How intense, simply magnificent. Tens of thousands of Death Eaters were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, unable to run except for waiting to be killed by the First Wizard Legion. After the Phantom Transfiguration, under the influence of the forbidden magic array, wizards have limited mobility. As for the other ways to move, how fast can you be? As fast as a dragon. Indeed, the anti-phantom transfiguration spell will also affect the standing of the Wizard Legion, but there are dragons with one increase and one decrease. The Death Eaters were already mortal. Not to mention that this magical tower is constantly bombarding the Death Eaters. The wizards of the Alchemy Wizard Legion looked at the Forbidden Forest that kept howling by the window, except for rejoicing. They even knew that after tonight, I was afraid that the entire wizarding world would be changed. In school, Professor McGonagall worried. "Anson is talking to him?" "Yes, yes." "Then aren't we going to help?" Professor McGonagall couldn't help but say it. Dunbledo smiled bitterly. "Why did Anson send the Dementors to take charge of the so-called security around the school?" "Just to remind him, Equinox. I believe he's still the kid we know, Minerva, and he hasn't let us down, has he?" Chapter 206. Wow. A mouthful of blood sprayed from Bella and other populations. Even Voldemort was embarrassed at the moment. Ha ha ha. 10,000 wizards, that's it. All around, except for a few Death Eaters around Voldemort, all turned into humanoid ice sculptures standing one after another. The white ice sculptures dispersed the darkness around them a lot under the moonlight. But it was even more cold. Harry and Cedric, for example, have retreated behind Anson. Anson is still like that. The long wand in his hand was on the ground, and the gem that marked the core of the icebox on it was still radiating. Bella grabbed Voldemort. "Master, we block him. You can go. As long as you go we have a chance." Voldemort broke free of her hand. Syllable. A slap on the wrist. 613. "Are you telling me to escape?" Bella took a step back in fear, her head bowed, not daring to look at Voldemort. "Pendra, come on, let's have a wizard's peak showdown. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Let me see how you are different from Grindelwald." The wand pointed at Anson. Anson shook his head. "Why, don't you dare." Nagini ran right. "How do you think I don't know?" "Kill you, and your soul will be revived in Nagini's body. It's a pity, Tom." Voldemort's eyebrows shrank. He did not expect that Anson had recognized Nagini's identity. He paid attention to Nagini's departure from here early. "The question is," Voldemort laughed, "so what? Nagini has left here. You can't find it. When the time comes, I will come back again." "So, you're ready to die?" "Death? I'm beyond death." "You?" "Yes." A girl slowly walked in from outside. It was Wanda. She was still holding a giant python in her hand, slowly twisting and struggling. Not who Nagini was. Unfortunately, no matter how strong the python is, it cannot be greater than Wanda, who has the rules of the dragon inscribed? Anson smiled, different from Voldemort's face full of ashes. Anson, how to deal with it? Wait, Voldemort quickly spoke, swallowing his spit. We can share the wizarding world, Pendra. Anson waved his hand. No, I can surrender to you, I can. The host. Enough, Voldemort scolded Bella, who wanted to speak, and turned to Anson flatteringly. I can give you everything I have, even my way beyond death. Anson still shook his head. Beyond death? Your ideals are indeed great, but you have never transcended death, because you have not died. Wanda immediately urged the chaos magic, and the Nagini in his hand turned into flying ash in the first place. Voldemort opened his mouth and howled in pain. When the remaining Death Eaters around saw this scene, they immediately turned around and ran. Vada nibbles on a big melon. Voldemort waved his wand, and several of the fleeing people died and fell to the ground. Turning to look at Bella, Lord, Master, falling apart. Bella did not expect until her death that Voldemort, the object of her allegiance and loyalty, would directly kill her, but she still did not hesitate. Anson said lightly, take them both away. Don't you need me to help you? The advantage is in me. With a smile, he took Harry and the two into the Forbidden Forest and disappeared. The two, looking at each other again, as if originally, in the wizarding world, there shouldn't be such a powerful person. Pendra, you are very abnormal. Without waiting for Anson to respond, Voldemort said to himself, I thought your secret would be obtained by purebloods. After all, you know, they are just a group of greedy and stupid people, not worthy of being called elegant wizards. It's a pity, you are not powerful like a wizard. Very keen intuition. Closing parenthesis. So, I would have liked to take this opportunity to get your secret and maybe finish the real Beyond Death. I wonder, isn't that the case? Maybe. If Voldemort gets the Sword of Kings, or even the secrets in the Sword of Kings, it can indeed transcend death. The dimensional demon god is almost an immortal existence. Voldemort's eyes lit up with lust. Then let me see this power, otherwise, you will die. Anson raised an eyebrow. Deprive this person of all the magic in him. Airplanes. A force acted on Voldemort, as if he had directly drained all his magic out of thin air, and his magic should have slowly recovered zero. Now there is no movement. His face showed stunned. Underneath the disbelief is a deep fear. Jerk looked up at Anson. This is not magic. This is not magic. Anson, no, this is magic. I am the dimensional demon god of this world, controlling everything in this world. Avada nibbles on a big melon, looking at Voldemort's body collapsed to the ground. Although I am not a complete dimensional demon god, I am not comparable to you. Just about to lift his foot to leave, after thinking about it, he still took Voldemort's body with him. Outside the magic tower, the battle continues. Tens of thousands of wizards, even tens of thousands of pigs for people to kill. It will take a long time to kill, not to mention in battle. However, a projection suddenly appeared in the sky. On the projection is a picture of Anson carrying Voldemort's body. Wanda said happily, look, I said he'll be fine. Lily opened her mouth wide. Arthur was numb. The world is going to be changed. At the same time, wizard gathering places all over the world were projecting Anson's picture at this moment, especially for Voldemort's corpse. Some people are happy, some are afraid, some are confused. All Death Eaters, your master is dead, and if you do not stop, your actions will follow in his footsteps. In addition, the Pendra family will control all wizarding ministries of magic, and after the war we will establish a new ministry to serve wizards. Anyone who attempts to interfere with the Pendra family wizard power 2.6 receiving the Ministry of Magic and establishing a new Ministry of Magic will be considered a Death Eater and can be killed without trial. The projection disappears. At school, Dunbledo sighed. After all, it was this day. Without waiting for him to say anything, an owl had already sent a letter. McGonagall, what's wrong, Professor? Quirrell asked me to go to the Ministry of Magic to discuss the new ministry. Minerva, pay more attention to the school. Leave directly. In the Ministry of Magic, most of the members of the ministry who had already slept were notified. Under Quirrell's decent magic robe and smiling face, no one dared to ignore his presence. Guys, this is the new Ministry of Magic system. Pass it around. Magical religion? Believe in Anson as the supreme god? Dumbledo frowned. What is this operation again? Chapter 207. At first glance, it does not seem to be much different from ordinary ruler methods. But Dumbledore knew that Anson's every step would have his deeper meaning, such as now. All wizarding systems have been transformed into wizarding churches, and the church has the rule of the supreme pope, that is, Anson, and the layout below is not much different. It's just that Anson's identity is confirmed on the surface. In this way, what exactly is Anson for? Not to mention that the Magic Congress on Mika's side is still running, and the Black State. They can't let Anson do this unless Anson directly sent a large number of wizards to suppress. Then I am afraid that it will be another blood and unnecessary sacrifice. At the same time, the entire Ministry of Magic in the Europa region was taken over by the Wizarding Legion brought by Filch. All the former members of the Ministry of Magic and the Pure Blood family who wanted to resist were killed. thinking that their time had come as soon as the Death Eaters disappeared. But I didn't expect another character to appear more terrifying than Voldemort. And what makes them even more helpless is that most of the people who overthrow them now are the squibs they once discriminated against, and many people have even been bullied by them. Makeover. For instead, these so-called normal wizards and pureblood wizards have become a group of people waiting to be divided. Ministry of Magic. As soon as Anson appeared, Quirrell immediately lowered his head. The people sitting below are all figures with heads and faces in the British region, such as Oldang and members of various families. Rank. A new era has arrived. The wizarding world of the past will be completely changed, and in the future, the wizarding world will be unimpeded, and there will be no barriers between them. The unity of the wizarding world is necessary. I know that some of you may be proud of your wizarding status, and indeed, we wield powers that Mus do not have. But this is not enough. Wizards have developed for so long, and how many wizards are there now? And what is the Mul population? Anson looked at the people below. There is a saying in the Mul world that only a large enough base group can breed greater and more progress, and I feel deeply. The Wizarding Church, unlike the Church of the Mul world, we are both above the Mul world and do not interfere with the operation of the Mul world. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Mr. Pendra, are you going to announce the existence of wizards to the Mul world?" "Yes." Hiss. Announcing the existence of wizards? Why do wizards have to hide themselves all this time? Because they knew that even an all-out war with the Mul world would not be able to defeat Muls. The cardinality is too large, and the number of wizards is too small. It takes at least close to 20 years to cultivate a wizard, and under the powerful Mul population, wizards in the hedge have no chance of winning, not to mention that after Muls have developed into modern times, they already have enough technology to make them eye. It further compressed the development of wizards, so much so that it created the current dilemma in the wizarding world. Once Anson announced the existence of the wizard, they couldn't imagine what would happen. People all admire and desire strength. Once Mus discover that they can't grasp this power, greed and can't be stopped, destruction is the only thing that will happen. Control the Multop. Can't do it. This kind of thing can't be done before the war with Muls. After all, the operation of the Mul world is not as simple as the wizarding world. And once the war started, this is even more unlikely. Once a person is controlled by a wizard, his behavior logic must be different from before, not to mention whether there are so many people in the wizard, as well as the unevenness of the wizard's own strength. Silence. Quirrell glared down. Anson said lightly, "I have controlled the Mul world around the world." In a word, the audience once again set off waves. Without waiting for them to discuss Anson, he said to himself, "In the future, wizards will follow the system of the Wizarding Church, complement the Mul world but do not interfere with each other, and new Mul protection laws and Wizarding Church laws will be promulgated later." Guys, don't think about breaking these laws or disobeying the orders of the Wizarding Church, especially at this time. After saying that, leave. Quirrell stepped onto the stage. With a wave of his wand, new Mul protection laws and Wizarding Church laws flew in front of everyone's eyes. Look through it. It seems that most of them are indeed conducive to the survival of wizards. But there is a kind of information in and out of the words. Anyone who dares to use wizarding power against Mus will be punished, no matter how big or small. It's a bit like extraordinary powers controlling the way the world works. But extraordinary powers do not interfere in the world of ordinary people. Novels. Just go to Felu. Closing parenthesis to this end, Anson deliberately expanded the external enrollment of major schools, especially for the Mul world. In this way, face the Mul world's thirst for wizarding power. Once the presence of wizards became the norm, fusion slowly took place. The words followed. There are many magic schools in the wizarding world, large or small, but their enrollment is really beckoned by every talented little wizard. By no means. In other words, does the number of squibs in the Mul world also exist? That's for sure. In this way, Anson can expand the number of wizards, as well as his own power, in a very fast time. The impetus of magic requires a huge population base. It just so happened that Anson had almost the entire wizarding world's knowledge in his hands, which was enough to meet the needs of knowledge under the nascent wizarding system. But it takes time to integrate forces. Hogwarts. Anson sits at the top, and below 667 is a kind of school professor and part of a purer blood family. At present, the entire Europa region has been controlled by the Wizard Legion, and the reform of the Wizarding Church is already underway. After counting the identities of all wizards, new changes will be on the agenda, and I am afraid that your help will be needed here. Everyone looked vaguely at Dumbledore, where his seniority and status were the most important. Sigh. What do you need us to do? In the future, I will expand the enrollment of magical schools, which will require a large number of qualified professors and people who can implement the new wizarding education system. Expanding enrollment? Professor McGonagall blurted out. This is not practical. A large number of students means consuming more magical items, which is not something that the wizarding world can support. No, in fact, yes, all the magical items used in the teaching will be provided by the Wizarding Church, and the professor does not have to worry. Hiss. This is a huge expense. Dunbledo asked, how did you do it? Anson smiled. Professor, I wonder if you have ever heard of a terminal birthman. It means that 99% of the wealth of the wizarding world is in my hands, and I use my own money to train new wizards, and the income generated in the process of consumption. It's back in your hands? Professor McGonagall froze. Anson nodded. Not bad, so don't worry about not being able to consume it. Chapter 208. In fact, it is not difficult to cultivate magic consumable items properly. It's just that it was once a pureblood family that mastered all kinds of resources in the wizarding world, and in sufficient cases, resources would only produce large enough benefits when they were few. And now Anson also controls the mole world, so that wizards don't have to hide in the east. The era of large-scale cultivation has arrived. The wizarding world will be in a state of eruption until the wizarding world stabilizes again. A month later, the Wizarding Church was formed, which controlled the wizarding power of the entire Europa region as well as the mole world. In addition, the former Ministry of Magic in various places was reorganized and became a force under the Wizarding Church, still called the Ministry of Magic, but it was controlled by the Ignoring Church. And the Wizarding Church, in turn, is controlled by Anson. But it doesn't involve the power to control the mole world, which is still in Anson's hands. Please Wizard Pope. In the British native wizarding gathering place and the new church building that was built, there was a crowd. Anson walked in dressed in a decent outfit that was different from the clothes of ordinary church members, and under his young face, he hid his beautiful and handsome appearance. Armed with a long stick wand, wears a crown transformed from the Ravenclaw crown. The whole person exudes a kind of power. Above, Dumbledo and a group of wizards with great influence in the wizarding world are waiting. Anson's coronation and testimony, carried out under their auspices. And this scene was also broadcast live and projected to the world in real time, especially for ordinary mole people. Virtual reality technology that was still science. It was actually made by a group of people who played metaphysics. But strangely, the emergence of this extraordinary power did not have anyone in any region shout a language beyond their desire. It's really weird. In fact, Anson's Wizard Legion has long been secretly controlling everything under a set of ceremonies. The Wizarding Church was established. First meeting of the Wizarding Church. Dunbledo was appointed Minister of Magical Education in the Wizarding Church. Lucius and Malfoy are the treasurers of the Wizarding Church. Umbridge is the Minister of Magic of the native wizarding world. Filch is the head of logistics for the Wizarding Church. Arthur Weasley as Minister of Wizarding Research. Wait, almost everyone who followed Anson held important positions, even Snape. It's just that he said that he wanted to accompany Lily well, otherwise his status would not be much lower than anyone's. Anson, at present, only the wizarding power of Black State and Mika in the wizarding world has not been included in the Wizarding Church system. What do you think, Tilda? Dunbledo, is there no way to coexist? Impossible. Umbridge sneered. Professor, it's not the same now, to be honest. I am indeed intoxicated with power, but His Excellency the Pope has mastered more than half of the wizarding world, and the current changes in the wizarding world are obvious to everyone, whether it is good or bad. You can tell? What is it to keep two barren lands? The will of Pope Benedru is the will of the wizarding world. Anson smiled. Dumbledo sighed. In this case, I am afraid that something unnecessary will happen. Waving his hand, there is no need, it must be done. After the wizard power is unified into one place, its power is the real power, and the development of the wizarding world is also based on this. Lucius, I think it's better to start with the Black State. The wizard power of the Black State is different from our Europa region, and their strength is not strong. Any other opinions? Quirrell probe. Your Majesty the Pope, I think it is possible to go hand in hand. We now have more than 300,000 wizard forces in our hands. In addition to maintaining the stability of the Europa region, we can also use close to 150,000 wizard powers, each half of which is not something they can fight against. Black State has a vast geography, and there are naturally no fewer wizards, but the agglomeration is scattered and difficult to unify. Mika is more concentrated, but their connection to the mole world is closer than other wizarding worlds, and a bad one will cause the possibility of moles over there going to war against wizards. So, everyone looked at Anson again. Don't worry about the power of moles, then go both ways. Anson looked at everyone. Besides, I don't know what you think of goblins. Goblin? Dumbledore knew that Anson had always had a special fear and interest in leprechauns. Anson's first economic operation was not only aimed at the wizarding world, but also tested the goblins. He himself knows some secrets. I am the Minister of Finance of the Wizarding Church, and I think it is not necessary to be controlled by goblins in our wizarding world, and goblins are not conducive to the development of wizards. Lucius chirped. This one, seeing the wind rudder, has always been the pinnacle. Dunbledo said carefully, Tilda if another war between goblins and wizards begins, I am afraid it will be even more detrimental to the development of wizards. I understand what the professor means, so I can give them a choice. What choice? Everyone doesn't know why. Do you know where the goblins came from? Quirrell shook his head. I don't know. It seems that there is no record of the origin of goblins in the entire wizarding world, only that they appeared suddenly. Nothing appeared suddenly, and if there were, it only means that the place where they appeared was too far away. Arthur's eyes lit up. You mean, you know about this place? Yes, goblins come from a vast, mysterious, powerful world, where there may be real gods. Cool. Panting. How is this possible? Anson continued, as far as I know, the goblins have lost the means to go back to that place. If I have a way to get them back, Lucius, then they will definitely go back. Zhao Zhao. As long as they leave the wizarding world, we can not only take back their right to issue and produce gold gallons. It has completely eliminated the threat of goblins to the wizarding world. Quirrell answered. So be it. Quirrell, arrange for the matter of Black State and Mika. Don't be afraid of death, and bring them into the wizarding church as soon as possible. Okay. Inside the Pope building, the goblin high ranking was invited here. Your Honorable Pendra Wizard Pope, I don't know if you called us here? Anson leisurely looked at these small but magical goblins. Who could have thought of their origins? The magic tower arranged in the Forbidden Forest came from the same place as the goblin, a place cut out of the wizarding world by some force. Do you want to return to Middle-earth? All the goblins stood up after hearing Middle-earth, their faces shocked. Chapter 209. How do you know about Middle-earth? That's impossible. Fairy Samson opened his mouth wide. Not many people know these 4 words in Middle-earth, even within the goblins, let alone those things that have long been turned into house elves. Even if it is a wizard, there should be few people in Samson's guess. No one knows. Maybe some wizards have some guesses, but they certainly don't know this part of Middle-earth. But Anson said it directly to them, obviously knowing their origins. Anson said calmly, you don't have to think about how I know, you just need to tell me if I want to go back to Middle-earth. A few goblins next to him looked at each other. Sitting in his chair panting again, this time, he did not despise Anson again. Even if Anson established the so-called wizarding church, it didn't have much impact on the goblins. Goblins can survive wars with wizards and compete for the ownership and operation of Gringotts, which represents their strength. Born to use magic. This is a talent that human beings cannot match. Even the anti-phantom transfiguration could not limit them. In fact, the wizard's understanding of goblins was still very one-sided. But in the face of Anson, he did not dare to see it that way. What price do we have to pay? Anson smiled. There is no price for 953, I can help you return to Middle-earth. Perhaps, wizards will also appear in Middle-earth in the future. Maybe we can help each other at that time. Maybe. Samson frowned. Still that sentence. How can you be sure that you can do this? Syllable. Snapped his fingers. After the sound, a black fog that was distorting space appeared behind Anson, and in the black fog, you could faintly see the scene at the other end. But not the layout of the room behind Anson. Instead, it's a picture of the forest. Obviously, this place is a different place and is not here. Several of Samson's goblins stood up in shock again, staring at the distorted space that Anson had made. That aura was exactly the same as the records inside the goblins. It's Middle-earth. Shortness of breath. How? What you need to think about now is how to take away so many goblins. After all, I'm afraid you can't control all the goblins now. Alas, Samson sighed. Truly, it has been a long time since the goblins appeared in the wizarding world, and if it were not for a part of the inheritance that had been preserved, I am afraid that they would not have dared to believe their origins. It's from another continent. Yes, continental. It's not the same world as the wizarding world. However, in the records handed down, it is not difficult to see that the continent was separated from the wizarding world by powerful forces. In later records, there was a mention of a key figure, King Arthur. According to the goblin records, King Arthur is said to have pursued the disappeared continent, which later led to the disappearance of King Arthur and the legendary mage Merlin. Now it seems that the wizard in front of him has obtained this secret. Anson, Pendra. It seems that King Arthur did not seem to have all failed. With the passage of time, the yearning for Middle-earth within the goblin itself will be infinitely reduced, so that now, he, the so-called goblin elder, cannot restrain all goblins. As for the house elves, they have been recognized by these normal goblins as not belonging to goblins. An old goblin sitting next to Samson suddenly spoke. You want to control Gringotts, right? Also, once we leave Gringotts, we will definitely be obtained by your excellency, so that we can not face the goblins, but also get Gringotts. Raise your thumb. Awesome. Anson spread his hands. It's just a deal, isn't it? You have nothing to lose, number. Moreover, as you know my strength, we can cooperate in Middle-earth. At least it will be much easier over there than here. Several goblins whispered. Long. Edison looked at him. We unify your excellency's deal, but we need some time to gather the clansmen. I wonder how long and how big this magic of your excellency can be activated. Enough for you to leave the wizarding world. Hearing this, several people did not say anything more, but made a request to see if it was real first. Very reasonable. Anson naturally agreed. Open the portal to Middle-earth. To put it bluntly, this thing is opened by the sword of the king, and the sword of the king is the doorkey to Middle-earth. Closing parenthesis. Perhaps this is not accurate. The sword of kings opens a dimensional world, and it also represents the core rules of this dimension. For example, the cosmic heart of the Marvel Universe. The two are similar. Once Anson completely controls the king's sword, it is equivalent to completely controlling the dimension of the wizarding world, and at that time, he can be regarded as a complete dimensional demon god. Transnational distorted spatial fluctuations, and many people appeared in Middle-earth. Anson was also the first time to arrive at this place, and he had only known that such a place existed and could come over. Immediately followed, directly frowning, Quirrell asked in a low voice, "What's wrong, young master?" "It's okay." Several goblins were still shouting in place, and even raised their hands to release spells to vent their excitement. Anson is a different feeling. Infinity stones, not available here. Moles. No, since the wizarding world is connected to the Marvel world, then the Middle-earth world that exists in the wizarding world should also be able to use the Infinity Stones. Why doesn't it work? Large expanses of low terrain, with hills not even visible from afar, should not be the center of Middle-earth. After returning, the goblins had gone to prepare to summon their clansmen to leave the wizarding world. Anson once asked Samson why they were so eager to leave the wizarding world. Samson's answer was, extraordinary powers should allow creatures with this ability to have a longer lifespan, but not in the wizarding world. And after returning to Middle-earth, their lifespan will increase several times. At the same time, development will be better than in the wizarding world. In Pendra Manor, you go and prepare and arrange for our people to receive all Gringotts. Young master, will the goblins play any careful tricks? They don't dare. What about Middle-earth? Anson paused. Let's think about it after ending the affairs of the wizarding world first. It's not complicated over there. It's just a little dangerous. In Middle-earth, there are so-called gods. Even if it is not a real god, at least it is a creature with superpower. You have to plan well. Chapter 210. 1 week after the establishment of the Wizarding Church, Quirrell came to the land of America with 7 legions of wizards through the port. Hiss. Phew. The air is full of exhaust gases. In other words, they know that I are coming, right? Yes, Mr. Quirrell, there are quite a few of them around. Quirrell looked around, and some of the men in suits and leather dressed as not like wizards were wandering, their eyes looking at the guys who suddenly appeared. On the other hand, they were dressed in black uniform traditional wizard robes, which were very dazzling. One came out of the crowd. Is it Mr. Quirrell from the Wizarding Church? Well, you are? Magical Congress. Mr. Samuel asked me to take you to the Magical Congress building. Quirrell walked ahead with his head held high. In the rear, the Dark Wizard Legion began to phantom and disappear, but the beautiful guard wizards watching around were helpless. There are too many families, but I can't do it. Can only watch in silence. I hope that a stable result can be obtained in the high-level negotiations, otherwise, maybe today they will face the army of wizards. Oh, God! Shouting Merlin probably couldn't bless them. Inside the Voss building, Quirrell sat opposite Samuel, and on both sides sat the high-ranking wizards of Mika, all of whom were the bigwigs and well-known wizards. On this side, a pair of eyes looked at Quirrell. Quirrell, on the contrary, seemed to be the party with the initiative, looking at Samuel with a smile and not saying a word. Samuel coughed twice. Ahem, Mr. Quirrell, I wonder if you have so many wizards coming over this time? It seems that we have not received your application for entry, and we can even determine that you entered illegally under Wizarding International Law. Oh? Gone. Samuel had a headache. He knew it would be difficult today, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult. Damn, Quirrell was just hitchhiking on the Pandra family's cart, and dared to be so arrogant to him. Mr. Quirrell, we can regard your actions as declaring war on us. That's right. Tens of thousands of wizards entering the beautiful jam for no reason is unforgivable. If you want me to see what they want to do is already obvious. I suggest direct. Gentlemen, the Magic Council respects freedom. Rushes. Quirrell slowly pulled out his wand, and everyone around him thought he was going to cast a spell, and they pulled out their wands in fright and aimed them at Quirrell. After shaking his head contemptuously, the voice is loud. Quirrell sat up straight. While you are talking about it, the army of the Wizarding Church has surrounded this place, as well as all your wizarding gathering points, even the Ifeimani School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Everyone chuckled in their hearts. Quirrell continued, there is only one choice before you now. Either agree to become part of the Wizarding Church, or, dear Mr. Anson, Mr. Pendra said, give you a chance to struggle. Choose. Inside what should have been a noisy venue, the crowd could even hear each other's breathing. The forces under the Wizarding Church also knew about the Death Eaters' wars, even if it was less than 2 weeks later. These so-called wizard legions have dragonskin magic robes that they cannot resist. Magic robes that can resist the Death Seeker. What do they fight with? Run? Once the subsequent Wizard Church is unified, it is not too simple to monitor the wizard. The same will be caught. Revolt. Just look at the Death Eaters at the end of the Resistance, and the tens of thousands of Death Eaters' hands were all dead and wounded like autumn winds sweeping away leaves. Most of them still feed the Dementors in Azkaban with emotions and souls. Not to mention, the Wizard Legion that appeared today is not the full power of the Wizarding Church, even if they can win once. What's next? It will only be to face more wizards. Everyone turned their gaze to Samuel, the leader of the Magical Congress, who was sitting at the top. The face is ugly, until it is dead grey. If we agree to take over the management of the Wizarding Church, how will we be treated? As long as you don't touch the laws of the Wizarding Church, nothing will happen, but if you do something you shouldn't. Closing parenthesis. Quirrell smiled. Trust me, you guys won't like Dementor Kiss. Someone shivered. Then we're going to get that so-called magic rule? I mean learn it. Of course. The vast majority of knowledge within the Wizarding Church is openly shared, as are the rules of magic. What about our original position? It will be assessed by the Wizard Church, and it will be specifically arranged when the time comes. Samuel suddenly said, "That has to do with the mole world over here." Quirrell interrupted him. "You don't need to think about it. Don't think about it, otherwise." For a whole month, the Mika Magical Council was abolished and merged into the Wizarding Church system, and the mole world power that was controlled by Anson. Another wizard legion led by Ritu and Skeeter also took control of the wizard power of the Black State in the end. It is said that many wizards died. Anson didn't care. Since then, the wizarding world has been unified for the first time. The result is the maiming of the old wizards, the total annihilation of the Death Eaters, the disappearance of the original Ministry of Magic, and the transformation of purer blood families laid the foundation for the absolute rule of the Wizarding Church. The Alchemy Wizarding Department led by Arthur Weasley provided Anson with another magical item. According to Anson's theory of discovering the rules of magic, each wizard has their own unique rules of magic. Based on this, through the birth of magical items made by Anson that can detect fluctuations in such magic rules, the activities of each wizard can be monitored, and this magic rule can be seen as the identity card of the wizard. One and only. The mighty wizard census is being carried out in full swing. Anson, already? Yes, sir. All the goblins who are willing to leave have already waited in the Forbidden Forest, and as for those who are not willing to leave, I have no choice. Nodded. Gringotts, it's done. As for what will happen to these goblins who are about to go to Middle-earth, can they be used by him again? It depends on how it develops in the future. In Middle-earth, there are dangers, but the potential is also very good. Gandalf would have been happy to know that there were people in the wizarding world who could beat people with big sticks just like him. Airplanes. The passage opened, and the goblins walked in surprise, until it's all gone. Dumbledo asked, "Are there many wizards over there?" Anson shook his head directly. "No, but there are some elves who can use magic, and their magic is very different from that used in the wizarding world." "Elves? Like a house elf?" "No, a true elf, beautiful, arrogant, kind, pure. It's magic begging." Chapter 211 is the goblin related to the so-called elves? Anson paused and slowly shook his head. There are both humans in Middle-earth, as well as elves, dwarves, hobbits, tree people, etc., as well as half-orcs who appear as villains. The gods that Anson wanted to plot did not appear, and it is said that all lived overseas and rarely appeared in Middle-earth. It's just that there are some incarnations of their powers, mages with extraordinary powers like Gandalf. Well, melee mages. As for the origin of the goblins in the wizarding world, Anson guessed that most of them were transformed by some kind of power. Maybe the hobbit was modified with some species. It's simple for a world with extraordinary powers, and even Hagrid is able to create new species by crossing magical animals. Not surprising. Hobbit? Yes, Professor, there is not much difference in size to goblins. The difference is that hobbits are not born to use magic in Middle-earth, but they have extremely high magic resistance, at least in the face of darkness magic. It is incredible that hobbits seem to be innately immune to the erosion of the Lord of the Rings for a period of time. Of course, there is no need to say more about being a more mysterious elf. Wisdom and purity seem to be synonymous with them. But then again, there can be no such perfect race in the world. Legend has it that the appearance of half-orcs has an element of elves, and I don't know if it is true or not. Dunbledo listened to Anson's introduction. That should indeed be a beautiful world. How are humans in it? Survive in the cracks. Dunbledo's face was stunned. How so? Are there no wizards among humans? Anson thought carefully and shook his head. Although Gandalf and Saruman are human forms, they are not strictly human, but Maya. The word Maya stands for God's power to walk on earth. So how do they resist? I mean, there are elves, hobbits, dwarves and even half-orcs. How can they resist? What does the professor think? Dunbledo was silent. It is nothing more than to resist the erosion of these forces with a huge number of troops, and the existence of Middle-earth is probably a long time ago according to Anson. For such a long time, they were able to resist it. Incredible. The eyes moved slightly. That Anson's action of letting the goblins go to Middle-earth is probably more than simple as it is now. Another month. The power of the Wizarding Church has never been greater, and the Mole world and the Wizarding world do not intersect with each other, but develop separately, but complement each other in some ways. For example, the moon landing. It is now possible to teleport to the moon instantly by means of wizards, once speeding up the technological progress of the Mole world. Through Mole science, wizards can better and more accurately discover potions and the magical secrets, and both of them have accelerated their development at the same time. How is it going? A tired Filch nodded. Young master, that kind of instrument has been arranged around the world, and in the future, the people of the Mole world will subtly accept us. This is also what Anson came up with. It is not practical for wizards to gain a foothold in the Mole world, and it is not practical to change by controlling a few people. History tells us that human desires are endless. In particular, it is a magic that they have not mastered in Legendary, spanning life and death, easily transferring space, etc., all of which are skills that they cannot hope for. So, if you want to really change the world, you need some magic means. Novels. Just go to Felu closing parenthesis. Since they can't change their attitude towards wizards cognitively, they fundamentally exert a force to force them to change. Both, magic modifies cognition. It was a big project, and few people in the wizarding world even knew of its existence. Now it seems that the effect is not bad. What about the remaining goblins? Quirrell frowned. Young master, you know, goblins have a natural talent for using magic, and many restrictions are difficult to work on them. It is difficult to capture the remaining goblins, and as for those who cooperate, they have all been transformed into house elves under the enslavement spell. Continue to capture. There is no need to remove the extraordinary power existence of the Wizarding Church in the Wizarding world. Understood. Have you heard? Anson is coming back to school today, and our curriculum seems to have changed a lot. Call His Excellency. How dare you call him by name? You heretic. Dilico glared at the little wizard fiercely. I tell you, everything that can change in the Wizarding world today comes from the Honorable Mr. Pendra, and no one should try to touch something that should not be touched. HMPH. Wait until Dilico disappears. The little wizards chattered. Seeing that he is proud, I thought he was Anson. But Anson is really magical. Think about it, we wizards no longer have to be careful to fear being discovered by muggles, nor do we have to think that muggles will come to attack us. I heard that there are many positions in the Wizarding Church that are vacant, and new positions will be selected among this year's graduates. It seems that even Street Mungo's hospital is said to have been expanded, and our potions and magic can help many muggles with healing, and even the treatment has increased a lot. Hey, I'm going to learn healing magic in the future. The changes in the Wizarding world are visible to the naked eye, especially the magic rules announced by Anson. Each of them is a earth-shaking change for the Wizarding world, and the most core and comprehensive magic rules are all placed in the major magic academies. Through the teaching of wizard professors, new wizard forces will soon form in the future, and the number and foundation of wizards will be greatly expanded. Hogwarts. Dunbledo looked at the magic rules that Anson had submitted, densely involving almost all the spells he knew. It is said that the Pendra family can use magic spells by attaching magic rules to magical items through alchemy. Professor McGonagall nodded. Well, their dragon skin magic robes have such a function. 1.4 is amazing. Speaking of which, it is necessary to talk about two special families after the establishment of the Wizarding Church, Ollivander and Grigovich, whose family heritage is to make wands. In Anson's perception, wands are almost equivalent to weapons. Even now there are a large number of wizards who cannot use wandless spell casting techniques, so it is necessary to control wands. Not to mention that after the rules of magic are announced, if someone imposes a magic rule on his wand, it is equivalent to his weapon being strengthened. It is not conducive to the stability of the Wizarding world. So Anson simply took back all this right, and they continued to make wands, but under the supervision of the Wizarding Church. And every wand must be recorded in the archive. Any wizard who transforms his wand needs to register with the Wizarding Church, otherwise, the Dementors in Azkaban will welcome him. Chapter 212 Dunbledo. I heard that Anson also arranged for all the little wizards who did not leave the school to inscribe the rules of magic. Well, just look at Wanda. The little wizard after inscribed the so-called dragon rule already has the threatening power of an adult wizard. Professor McGonagall paused. I think it's a good thing. Anson is improving the potential of wizards. But there is also a limit to this potential, and once we grow to the magical creatures represented by the inscribed rules of magic, the potential will be exhausted. At that time, if no new and taller magical creatures are found to inscribe, then the upper limit of the wizard will be determined. For example, now, what Harry and Ron and others inscribe is the dragon rule. Strengthening their bodies increases the total amount of mana, which increases the power of their spells over time. But there is a limit to this. Both the limits of the dragon itself. Even Anson now has no good way to find a new replacement, and maybe Middle-earth will exist. Otherwise, you can only go to the Marvel world to find it. There are many in the Marvel world, such as some ancient races, such as the dragons that have been eating the world tree under the world tree. It's just that O4 plots these need strong force as the foundation. Otherwise, it is possible for people to hammer Anson to death. Huh? Teach your magic wand? McGonagall looked at the new wand in Dumbledore's hand in amazement. Old Deng smiled. I gave that wand to Anson. This is my deal with him. This one is not bad. It seems to be made of the branches of some world tree, and the power is incredible. Okay Minerva, you go and arrange the inscription of the little wizards. I heard that Filch and Arthur did it, and the world has changed incredible. Yes, Professor. Below, several stalls have been set up in the pitch where Hogwarts Quidditch is played. The little wizards of one academy inscribed the rules of magic in turn. And in the magic tower, there are 3 mysterious things in front of Anson. The 3 Hallows of Death. Wanda wondered. Didn't you say that no one who uses them will end well? That also collects what to do. Anson touched his chin. Elder Wand, Resurrection Stone, Invisibility Cloak. Each has its own role. Under the real eye, you can see the complex magic rules inside, which are somewhat different from the alchemical magic in the Wizarding world. To Anson's surprise, inside all 3 magical items, he could feel a unique magic fluctuations. It seems that it can be connected together. It's just research. As soon as the words fell, Anson manipulated his magic to try to connect the mana fluctuations and the magic rules inside the 3 magic items. Airplanes. A burst of light appeared. The two took a few steps back and watched quietly. This is? Wanda blurted out. It's not scientific. The 3 deathly hallows fused in an incomprehensible state to form a new magical item. A rock. Anson smiled. No, this is authority. Authority. Wanda didn't understand even more. Deathly hallows are legendary to be made by the Grim Reaper himself, whether they are true or not, but they all have their own magical abilities, each of which has the power to surpass death or grant death. The authority that emerged after being unified into one place shocked Anson. Gain. This is the authority of the wizarding world. Anson raised his hand and touched it, and the stone disappeared from Anson's hand. On the other hand, in his soul, there are already some mysterious magic rules at this moment. Moreover, he could feel that the connection between Middle-earth was more intimate. God, the guy who separated Middle-earth from the wizarding world in the first place, must have a big plan. As long as someone can master the 3 holy weapons of death, you can grasp some authority in the wizarding world in certain situations. Both, dimensional demon god light. Although it is not as powerful as the sword of the king, it is already very good. Does this mean that what King Arthur was doing in the first place, and someone was doing the same? Is it a transcendent power in Middle-earth, or in the wizarding world, or is it the real Grim Reaper? After a pause, Anson closed his eyes and carefully felt the control of the world. Should be in about 30%. Are you alright? Wanda worried. It's okay. By the way, why don't you go to class? Wanda spread out her hand. I found that I can already use chaos magic to do most wizards can use spells. I think it would be better to study this in depth. At least there is no difficulty. Except for some special spells, it does. For example, the death-seeking charm, which are designed to the soul. Wanda cannot simulate the same effect with chaos magic. Closing parenthesis. But it is enough to show the strength of Wanda's talent. Chaos magic, terrifying. Just take your idea. In the evening, Anson came to Dumbledore's office. After saying the password for nourishing bee candy that had been slowed down for several years, Dumbledore's old face appeared. Ah, Anson, why are you here? Professor. He looked up at Phoenix Fox, who was shrugging his head to the side. I heard the professor wants to retire. Old Deng laughed. The Death Eater plague has disappeared. The wizarding world has changed dramatically. I find that I am old. And now is your future old? Not necessarily. The wizards who inscribed the rules of dragon magic are hundreds of years old. The powerful can even reach thousands of years old. Of course, this depends on the wizard's own development and training of his own abilities. It seems to see Anson's thoughts. Old Deng smiled. Don't care, I've been working at Hogwarts for decades. It's time to do something I want to do. Minerva, they will do a good job. You don't have to worry about educating the new generation of wizards. Anson directly said what he meant. 383 Professor, since you know the existence of Middle-earth, you should be able to think that I will definitely go over in the future, and I want to build a wizarding magic school over there. Oh? Professor, I need your help, he said sincerely. He was familiar with letting him unify Middle-earth, but he couldn't teach magic. With old Deng here, you can eliminate a lot of trouble. Another deal? Anson nodded. It can be counted so much. You can actually order me directly. You are a venerable wizard, a world where humans still survive under the control of God, and they need our help. Professor. Control? It's not a good word. I have that much effect? Old Dunton paused. I mean, you can easily kill so many Death Eaters. To be honest, it's more than I thought. If even you can't fight the gods of Middle-earth, I'm afraid I can't. Anson said mysteriously. Of course not now, but what if you learn Animagus? You know, Hagrid can already turn into a dragon. If I'm not mistaken, the professor's patroness is a phoenix, right? By inference, your Animagus form should also be a phoenix. Once transformed into a phoenix, Dengbola Lido equals immortality. It should be nice to let him touch the so-called gods of Middle-earth. Chapter 213. For some time afterwards, Dumbledore practiced Animagus with the help of Anson. Compared to Hagrid, he was much simpler. Old Deng himself is a master of transfiguration, and he is naturally no stranger to Animagus, as well as the emerging magical knowledge such as the rules of magic. When he felt a force acting on him, he was pleasantly surprised. A few seconds later, the human body turned into a phoenix and flew through the air with its wings open. The cry even attracted Phoenix Fox in Hogwarts, and the curious look in his eyes was clearly speaking. Who are you? Professor McGonagall opened her mouth in confusion. Actually, it really can. Anson, a patroness like us who is not a wizard of fantastic beasts, can we have the Animagus form of fantastic beasts like Hagrid? Even, many forms. Anson laughed. Of course, Professor. The premise is that I need to know the magic rules that this magical animal represents, and for now, choosing a dragon is the most suitable. After all, as you know, the magic rules of dragons are the most advanced and profound magic rules I have mastered so far, and the magic rules represented by the phoenix. Anson was reluctant to hand it over. The phoenix represents immortality in a way. He used to be hungry. Now he understands why he is regarded as a dimensional demon god by Yu, and knows how to improve the power represented by the dimensional demon god. The immortality represented by this phoenix did not seem to have much effect on him. But even if this is the case, He will not easily hand over this method. Incredible. McGonagall was even wondering if she could turn into another magical animal, one that can use magic even in the form of Animagus. This was subversive and the wizarding world in the past. It's just that looking at Anson's eyes has some other meaning. If she wants this method to perform the magical animalized Animagus transformation, it should be a big price change. The professor wants to try it too. Anson saw her eagerness. McGonagall paused. Can I too? I mean, I don't have the same value as Professor Dumbledore. It's the word. No. The role of teaching you is far beyond your awareness, and I would be willing to help you if I could. Professor McGonagall smiled. As a master of transfiguration, Anson's proposal is undoubtedly very attractive. Middle-earth, within the Shire. Bilbo, have you heard? Recently in the south of the Shire, a guy called a leprechaun who looks a lot like us hobbits has appeared. Bilbo's slightly aged face fell. What did you say? Frodo also thought he had said the wrong thing. Goblin, what's wrong? How is this possible? Bilbo immediately got up and ran towards the bookshelf where his notes were placed, his short figure looking a little happy under the arched circular house. If you ignore the solemnity on Bilbo's face, Bilbo was rummaging through the notes in his hand, and it could be seen that the book had been on it for a long time. Ah, found it. Goblins, hobbits and goblins. There is half-orc blood. Thinking about it, he suddenly froze. Frodo came over. Are you okay? It's okay. Maybe I thought too much. Where did you hear this name? Frodo said unimpressed. The whole Charles is spreading, and the goblins also say that they used to be hobbits too, but the portraits I brought back from others don't look like it. Are the big eyes, more pointed ears than us, and a long nose? Yes, Bilbo. How do you know? Don't talk about this. Your 100th birthday party is coming. Do you want any gifts? Bilbo smiled gently. My greatest gift is to be able to continue on adventures. Of course, if I can get your blessing on the day of the birthday banquet, I think it is the best. Of course. Far away from the other side of the Shire territory, some humans in black robes are constantly appearing, until a young man with a golden dragon-shaped mark embroidered on his body appeared. Anson looked around. The rich magic fluctuations were nearly 10 times more powerful than the wizarding world. In such an environment, it is easy to give birth to people with extraordinary abilities. However, looking at the memory of the entire Middle-earth world, it seems that apart from Maya and the elves, there are not many manifestations of extraordinary power. The hobbit just has resistance to dark forces. Let's say that magic resistance is high. The same is probably true of dwarves. Mankind ignore half-orcs. This, too, can be ignored. Closing parenthesis. The world is weird. Young master, I feel that every moment here is getting stronger. If in the wizarding world it will take us close to 10 years to develop the dragon magic rules to the extreme, Quirrell said solemnly. Here I estimate that it will only take 3 years to reach the limit state. Truly. Do you all feel that way? The members of the wizarding church around nodded one after another. The magic on Gain's side is too strong, and in the eyes of these wizards, they are like walking in an ocean of magic. The magic was involuntarily attracted to it. It's incredible. Young master, do you want to look for the vicinity? Go ahead. Not long after, the wizard who left returned. My god, an unknown village has appeared 50 kilometers away from here, with an architectural style different from the wizarding and Mull worlds, and no extraordinary powers have been discovered. I came back because I didn't dare to stay longer for fear of being discovered. Well, Anson nodded. Did you see what it looked like? The wizard recalled. It seems to be somewhat similar to a leprechaun, but different, more like a human than a leprechaun, but also, short. That's the Hobbit. Go check it out. Dozens of wizards all flew into the sky on flying broomsticks, flying towards the place where the village was found at great speed. In the sky, the number of people is about 200, not leprechauns, very similar to leprechauns. This is the Hobbit, a magical race in Middle-earth, born with high magical resistance. Specific. Grab one and see. Quirrell smiled wickedly and nodded. Yes. Quickly appeared next to a hobbit, directly controlled him with the capture curse, and brought it back. Under the real eyes of Anson, a spell was used slightly. It is true that the resistance of demons is higher than that of humans, but it is not much higher, but their resistance to black magic is very high. Moreover, this creature is not without magic. Some like a squib festival. It's just that they won't use and develop it. Chapter 214. Young Master. All the memories have been extracted. It's very interesting. This village doesn't seem to really have any extraordinary powers, but it is in Middle-earth. Quirrell was excited. Anson didn't stop him. Take it back. Go to this place called the Baggins family. Understood. Baggins. This surname is key in Anson's memory, which has to talk about a magical thing in Middle-earth, the Lord of the Rings. The ring was created by Sauron. There are 11 in total, given to humans, dwarves, and elves, and Sauron has also specially created a supreme ring that can control all the rings. Later, because the elves recognized his intentions, Middle-earth's conquest of Sauron officially began, and for some unexpected reasons, an adventurous Bilbo and Baggins in the Baggins family accidentally got this supreme ring. That's where the story begins. Anson was still curious about what kind of ring could make so many people worry. In his impression, none of these rings seemed to have much effect. However, it is worth mentioning that when the Supreme Ring was all eliminated, the elves also slowly disappeared into Middle-earth with time 320. To say that there is no connection is unbelievable. And on the other hand, if any race wants to grow, even a race that represents purity like elves will inevitably need to expand. Not to mention that they themselves are a species with extraordinary powers, and they are born to consume more resources than ordinary people. But they just disappeared into Middle-earth, which doesn't make sense unless they've got what they want. Young master, it's here, Quirrell said, pointing to the village below. It was smaller than the Hobbit village they saw on the road, but perhaps because of the heart of the Shire, the Hobbit life here was more wanton. At least there is no precaution. Anson waved his hand. Except for Mr. Quirrell, you guys go back for the time being. Landing, the wizards disappeared after distorting space. Quirrell couldn't help but be curious. Young master, let's come here. Take a look. Seeing Anson without saying anything, Quirrell had to follow behind him into the Hobbit village, and children from a distance saw them coming. Don't be afraid. Some even came over and asked if they were a businessman or something much like Btb. Are you human? Anson raised his eyebrows. Oh, why do you ask that? I haven't seen humans, but I've heard Mr. Bilbo say that humans are weak and selfish, but I don't think you're like you. Ha ha ha. So who do you think we are? The little hobbit scratched his head. I don't know, alas. Bilbo, you just said, can you take me to his house? You know him, so to speak. A house similar to a mushroom-steamed bun house is erected halfway up the hillside, and here you can see the entire village below and beyond, which is beautiful. This is it, the child said and ran away. Quirrell saw Anson nod and stepped forward and knocked on the door. Bang bang bang. Who? Babbled, and Frodo opened the door and slammed it down. You are Bilbo and Baggins there? Frodo subconsciously looked back at the room, and Quirrell directly asked for his wand. All petrified, pushing away Frodo, who was blocking the doorway, walked in. Just fix your eyes. I saw a small, old hobbit put something on his finger. Anson's fingers hooked slightly, and a force directly pulled the ring in Bilbo's hand into Anson's hand. Quirrell immediately made up for a petrification spell. Airplanes. As soon as the ring landed in his hand, Anson seemed to see a large pupil standing in midair. The hissing murmur sounded in my mind. Demagoguery me. The wand touched the ground. Call for the Divine Guard. The ultimate positive emotion appeared, directly suppressing the temptation from the ring, which is a little weird. Anson was looking with the ring up. Young master, what's wrong? Supreme Lord of the Rings? Supreme Lord of the Rings? Is it the one that the young master once said? Novels. Go on fellow closing parenthesis. Gee, interesting. It seems that the extraordinary power in Middle-earth is far from as simple as he thinks. The Hobbit house looks small, but it's not really short when you go inside. Waving his hand, Quirrell lifted the petrification spell from the two. Bilbo pulled Frodo behind him, and his nephew couldn't have an accident, although he didn't know what these two humans were here for. Don't dare to think about it. The young man seemed to know the ring. Another, why are they so capable of Gandalf? Be sure to hold out until Gandalf arrives. Anson raised his eyebrows and looked at the two. Well, unique magic rules. The Hobbit does have some meaning. Don't be nervous, we won't harm you. Yes, the meaning on Bilbo's face was clearly saying that their actions just now did not look like they did not hurt them. Anson, you see, if we're going to hurt you, can you resist? Frodo said. Gandalf is coming. He's the most powerful wizard. Poof. Quirrell couldn't help but laugh. Frodo, why, you don't believe it? Quirrell shook his head. Of course not, this gentleman. I think you are right. Bilbo asked solemnly. You are wizards too? I thought there weren't too many wizards. So, in a way, we're waiting for Gandalf. Can we borrow it for a while? Bilbo spread his hands. We don't seem to have a choice. Thank you for your generosity. Quirrell winked at Frodo. For him, hearing about the outside world from his uncle Bilbo was what interested him most, and Gandalf's deeds and skills. In his cognition, it is the most powerful. Now, that belief is somewhat shaken. A few days later, a horse-drawn carriage slowly entered the village. In Bilbo's room, Gandalf secretly wants to come in and surprise his old friend Bilbo. Tiptoeing around, he saw two strangers. Anson looked at him with a smile. Hello, Master Gandalf. Frodo heard the voice and ran in. Gandalf. Combat ran the two men and they snatched Bilbo's ring. What the? Gandalf naturally knew what the ring in Bilbo's hand was, but he didn't expect that these two strange humans would come here and snatch him. Haven't spoken yet. Anson had put his hand on Quirrell's shoulder. We'll see you again. Shout. Syllable. The two disappeared in distort. Gandalf opened his mouth and looked at the scene in shock. This. What kind of magic is this? Is this magic? Chapter 215. Anson didn't think about how to do with Gandalf. In fact, the changes in Middle-earth would need to be messed up for him and the wizarding world, and it wouldn't happen because the Supreme Ring wasn't under Gandalf's control. Gandalf is here not only because he perceived something, but also because the so-called god behind him already knows something, or what arrangements were made. Therefore, Whether there is a supreme ring in the hands of the Middle-earth world is estimated to be the same as in the original play. Anson and Quirrell went straight to the Lonely Mountain they got from Hobbit memories. Lonely Mountain, once home to the dwarves' most glorious and last underground cities, excelled at forging blades and equipment. Gifted, in order to be able to create more powerful equipment, they also have the experience of digging ore and treasure down. The Lonely Mountain is said to have hidden wealth that cannot be imagined. Unfortunately, Lonely Mountain was later occupied by Smaug, the last dragon in Middle-earth, and the dwarves can only go away. It can be seen that the dragon Smaug is powerful. Anson came to Lonely Mountain this time for Smaug. He wanted to know what was the difference between Smaug and the dragons in the wizarding world. At least in terms of intelligence, Smaug should be more prominent than the dragons in the wizarding world. This is special. Sky. Quirrell suddenly pointed to the other end of the forest and said, "Young master, look there. There seems to be some creature." "Hey, is this human?" Half-orcs. Their hideous appearance and exposed bone spurs, despite their human form, can never be compared to humans. In terms of bloodline, orcs are even closer to elves. Because the origin of the half-orcs is transformed and bred by fallen elves, it is necessary to distinguish the stronger of the other kind of half-orcs. Strong orcs. Strong orcs were bred by the wizard Saruman, and they are stronger and taller than half-orcs. And what they see now is just ordinary half-orcs. According to the flight speed of the two, this should be close to the edge of the original dwarf country, not too far from the human city. But the half-orcs had already appeared here. Brows furrowed slightly. "Quirrell, young master. Do you need to deal with it?" "No. Go directly to Lonely Mountain." Flying broomsticks glide quickly over the forest, across primeval forests, human cities, and even in some places they met so-called elves. Originally, Anson also wanted to grab one or two or something to study. It's a pity, it's too rushed. Lonely Mountain. Under a huge valley, like a knife and axe split out of a mountain, some traces of man-made repairs can be faintly seen. Arrived? Quirrell asked curiously. Has this Smaug always lived here? Although dragons have a habit of collecting wealth, they always need to eat, right? No one will want to step around the Lonely Mountain because of the appearance of Smaug, and there are forests all around, enough to feed it. Follow the mountain range and fly into the ruins of the building. The bones of the dwarves were laid aside, various weapons were scattered on the ground, and from time to time you could see some gold coins falling among the grass. Anson suddenly looked up. "Did you hear that?" Quirrell's face was solemn. The sound of breathing, moreover, is a very strong breathing sound. It should be larger than the body of a dragon. 7 turns and 8 turns. At one turn Anson grabbed Quirrell, and in a hurry he didn't even have time to notice. The two were on the 3rd floor of a huge palace. There is a huge space below, which used to be some kind of staircase or something, but it is worth noting that it is now densely packed with gold coins and all kinds of gold and treasure objects. As far as the eye can see, it is all gold. Lonely Mountain wealth. The last glory of the dwarves? Quirrell asked in a low voice. It seems that gasping sound came from here. Anson pointed to the bottom of the gold coin pile. That, vaguely, you can see a slight undulation in the gold coin pile, and there must be some huge animal hidden below. Smaug. Anson took a serious look a few times. Through the huge pile of gold coins, there were powerful mana fluctuations, which seemed to be similar to any dragon he killed, but more powerful. Unfortunately, the gold coin still prevented him from further observation. With a wave of his arm, a gold coin fell into his hand and threw it out. Jingling. Cool. Under the pile of gold coins, a pair of golden eyes suddenly opened. Novels. Just go to Fellow closing parenthesis. As Smaug raised his head, the crackling sound of gold coins falling and colliding appeared, and the huge head slowly lifted. Anson and Quirrell opened their mouths at the same time. It is at least several times larger than the dragon in the wizarding world, and there is a sense of teasing in his eyes all the time. Is it defiant of them? Human? Well, are some guys who don't know if they're alive or dead trying to steal my treasure? As soon as the words fell, Smaug's huge body had completely appeared in front of the two. If the dragon in the wizarding world is the size of a big truck, then Smaug looks like at least 3 big trucks. Hiss. Such a guy. Is it really a dragon? It is no wonder that the dwarves in Middle-earth were forced to leave the Lonely Mountain by a dragon, even if there was their inexhaustible wealth here. Really, it is impossible to resist. According to the data of the dragons in the wizarding world, if you compare horizontally, Smaug's ability will be stronger. Regular wizards don't have hundreds of them to go up against Smaug, and they have to be careful. They probably won't be Smaug's opponents. The huge head stopped a few meters in front of Anson. Smaug, you have a feeling that makes me very close. Strange. Are you also a dragon? Is there a dragon that looks so ugly? Anson. Smaug, the last dragon in Middle-earth. Daring. You should call me his honorable dragon. Crown of Smaug. The wand in Anson's hand slammed it on the ground. The gemstone that represents the core of the icebox is radiating light. Clicking. Click. White frost spread throughout the hall. Smaug smiled contemptuously. Boom. As soon as he moved his body, he had already shattered the cold ice. This bit of frost can't freeze it. However, the scene that surprised it appeared again, and the cold ice that should have shattered and fallen to the ground turned into a white mist and climbed onto its body. The wand in Anson's hand shined even more. It's like daylight. 3 seconds later, all but one of Smaug's eyes were frozen under the thick ice. Anson flew over and stood above it. Do you want to live, or do you want to die? Chapter 216 Roar. With a dragon roar, all the cold ice that had wrapped its body was shattered, and some fragments even beat the ground and the stone walls in the hall into powder. Roar. After roaring, he opened his mouth and spit flames at the two people, sweeping over. Anson grabbed Quirrell and hurriedly retreated outside. In the main hall, although Smaug could not be used, its flames were also extremely tricky for the two. After all, there were really limited places to hide, and he didn't think that the stone pillars in the hall could stop Smaug. Outside, after waving his hand to keep Quirrell away, Smaug broke through the stone wall and came out. Huge eyes stared at Anson fiercely. In all these years, no one has ever dared to talk to it like this, and this stupid human being actually wants it to choose death. Unforgivable. Flap your wings. The scales reflected the light under the sunlight. 737, and the entire dragon appeared in front of Anson like a glowing giant. Open your mouth is a mouthful. Anson raised his wand, like a stick, and waited until Smaug's giant mouth arrived. Boom. A dull voice appears. Smaug's head was slapped sideways and jumped on it as Smaug's huge inertia flipped. Roar. Damn humans, you give me down, down. Anson remained motionless as if he had taken root on its back. The wand also knocked on its head from time to time, very annoyed. As a last resort, Smaug could only fly in the air in an attempt to throw Anson off. Brows furrowed slightly. Smaug is strong, and the demon resistance is high. It's not that he can't kill Smaug, it's just that a living Smaug is useful to Anson. After death, Smaug can give it an irregular magic rule. There is no other benefit. Otherwise, with the icebox and the eternal flame embedded in this wand, they can kill it. In my name, limit the magic recovery in Smaug's body. The voice just fell. Smaug's huge pupils contracted violently, and it could feel that the magic power in his body had not recovered after being consumed. Hiss. How is this possible? Are you a wizard of Verona? Anson could even feel the trembling of Smaug under his feet. The fear that once made it wrong in flight almost hit a mountain wall on the side. Verona? This seems to be the birthplace of the elves, or rather, the place where the gods of this world live. You can see it too. I have the ability to kill you, but I don't. We can talk if we can. Smaug hesitated for a moment. Finally, he landed on a lonely mountain. Looking at Anson who came down from him, Smaug couldn't help but take a few steps back and smashed the mountain rock on the side. This scene surprised Anson even more. Smaug is powerful, but so fearful of a place name. How do you say I'm from Verona? Smaug looked at the wand in Anson's hand. That stick is the branch of the world tree, right? Well, Anson narrowed his eyes. World tree? You know, I saw it when I was a child, and when you hit me just now, I felt the fluctuations that only come from the unique world tree, and I will not forget it. Deep eyes. On the huge head, Anson even saw something called hatred. Why does a world tree exist in this world? In his memory, the elves were created by the god of this world, Eluvita, and were the only gods of this world. And the elves first inhabited the world tree. He had thought it was just the same name. But unexpectedly, the wand made from the branch of the world tree he brought from the Marvel world was recognized by Smaug. Something is wrong. If the world tree of this world is the world tree of the Marvel world, then why can't the Infinity Stones be used here? Smaug saw that Anson was silent and spoke. It turns out that Middle-earth is not the only dragon like now, but our existence affects the balance of Middle-earth too much. So, someone killed you? Anson frowned again. Smaug nodded. Of course, otherwise the entire Middle-earth world will be controlled by our dragons, and there are opportunities for other races to reproduce. It's arrogant to say, but also sure. A Smaug is already so powerful. If Anson does not have this wand, he may not be able to take Smaug. After all, this guy's demon resistance is really not ordinarily high. If you can't beat people, you can still run around. Anson's voice changed. I'm not from what you said about Velina. On the contrary, I come from a place where I might want to attack Velina. Are you interested? Smaug's eyes widened. That clearly means that the world tree is only owned by Verona, and he wants to deceive it. Find you a few dragons, and countless treasures. Seriously? Smaug's pupils were about to turn into several money symbols at this moment. Anson smacked his lips. If you knew it was so easy, there would be no need to waste so much effort. Sure enough, the dragon is good for money as well as the mother dragon. Novels. Just go to Felu. Originally, the dragon in the wizarding world was really a little unlikable. If he could pass through Smaug. If you reproduce a wave, isn't there an endless flow of children and grandchildren? Worthwhile. Laughed. Of course, but you need to sign a contract with me. A piece of parchment floated in front of Smaug. Smaug subconsciously came up, and in the next second, the contract was pasted to its face, and a drop of dragon blood was ingested by the contract and floated in, where Smaug still didn't understand. Scammed? Alas, not. Huh? Anson snorted, and Smaug only felt that it would be painful for him to disobey the words of the man in front of him again. It's that contract. Damn it. Yes. Don't try to scold me. Even the slightest thought of going against me will make you hurt. Of course, I can indeed find you a group of female dragons and money. 2.3 Smaug shouted. No way, I am already the last dragon in this world. What if you are deceived, and you can't scold yet? Quirrell saw a man and a dragon flying over without moving for a long time. Anxiously asked, Young master, are you okay? It's okay. Go and take all the treasures in the Lonely Mountain away. Return to the Wizarding World with Smaug. As soon as it landed, the magical animals in the Forbidden Forest all seemed to be quiet at the same time, without any movement. Those centaur tribes that had long since moved to the depths of the Forbidden Forest, all the horses, looked at the location of the magic tower and shivered. Mars is bright again, move and again. I agree. Go bring some dragons, you know. Quirrell looked at Smaug with a smile. Yes, young master. Chapter 217. For some time to come, it is said that Smaug would generally dash in the dragon field controlled by Anson. At the same time, it also added some fresh blood to the dragon field. According to Ron's brother Charlie's observations, many female dragons have changed. Of course, he is shocked how there can be a dragon of the size of Smaug in the world. It is even more expected whether Smaug says will have such a talent as it. If there were, it would be a huge change for the Wizarding World. Anson can see that Smaug has magic rules that exceed those of dragons in the Wizarding World, and at present, it is not known whether it is because the magic of Middle-earth is stronger than that of the Wizarding World, or maybe it's something else. But at least now they have a chance. If it is a relationship between Middle-earth, maybe bringing the dragons in the Wizarding World and cultivating them, they may also be improved. Is good news. Anson takes Wanda to Middle-earth again. The Wizarding World has just transformed into another system, which still needs stability, and is not suitable for large-scale power transfer. It's also good that they are a pioneer. Magic is indeed very strong, Wang 19 complained. In this environment, I am afraid that every creature can use magic. Anson smiled and shook his head. Not really, huh? Although there are extraordinary powers in Middle-earth, such as the great power of dwarves, the power and magic of elves, the magic of Gandalf, and the resistance of hobbits to black magic, and so on. However, only a small number of elves and Gandalfs can be considered magical and supernatural powers. However, there are quite a few magical creatures. For example, giant spiders and fire demons in the mountains and forests, and even ghosts and so on. It seems that there is something here that we don't know. Anson agreed with Wanda's words. In Middle-earth, as long as there is the right magical knowledge to teach, it is basically easy to give birth to extraordinary powers such as wizards. Unfortunately, the extraordinary power of Middle-earth can be said to be all in the hands of elves and a few people. No external transmission. So shall we come over? Get to know the world well. Somewhere in a human tavern near the land of the Shire, Gandalf came here with the dwarves to wait for a human, a descendant of the gang's royal family, Aragon. So, the supreme ring has now been snatched away by someone who doesn't know where he appeared. Gandalf looked embarrassed and nodded. Yes, so we need to find that person first. Now that the dark forces have begun to spread towards Middle-earth, I don't know how long the days of peace will last. The dwarf muttered. I ran away with my things earlier, and I was still waiting for someone to find it. Everyone frowned slightly. But this is the case. Maybe that person does not know what the supreme ring is, does not know its weight, but since he will snatch the ring, that means people at least know it's a magic ring. Means power and power. The only way now is to seek the help of the elves, Gandalf said, glancing at the dwarf on the side. The dwarves immediately looked unhappy. When the Lonely Mountain was broken, the elves could have helped, but they stood by because the dwarves coveted some of the elves' things. This hatred is even settled. Now Gandalf is going to the territory of the elves, but it is not to embarrass them. However, if they want to return to the Lonely Mountain, they will need Gandalf's help, as well as the help of the hobbits. Shrug. We have no opinion. Aragon nodded. I am familiar with the place where the elves are. Gandalf smiled. This one grew up in Rivendell, where the elves lived, also called the Valley, and it was also one of the elves' large territories in Middle-earth. In a human city, Anson and Wanda, dressed in wizard robes, attracted everyone's attention. This is the national capital. Wanda's face was full of disgust, and at a glance, the entire country was probably not as big as a few blocks of modern society. This is normal. There were many of these in the Middle Ages, and a few villages dared to call them kingdoms. Under the real eyes, Anson could see some magic in the passing humans, but like squibs, they couldn't use them. If you cultivate from an early age, most of them should be able to become wizards. You find that no, the magic of this place is rich, but it doesn't seem to be as active as in the Wizarding World. Yes, that's the word. The magic of Middle-earth seems to be too dense and thick, and ordinary people, let alone use magic power, find it a problem. On the contrary, the magic in the Wizarding World, although not as much as here, is very light. Closing parenthesis. It seems that the magic is not as rich as possible. As good. For example, not everyone can compare with Thor's kind. Most of them just live longer and have more power. Living in an energetic place all year round is a pick that will have a special performance. Fortunately, that's the case. Wanda looked up. What do you say? Otherwise, they might not live to be 11. Wanda fell, silently. Also, if the magic in the body is too abundant to be guided and released, It seems that it is inevitable to become silent. Well, Anson suddenly froze. What's wrong? Frowning. It seems that something peeked at me just now, which is very strange. Shaking his head and ignoring 017, Rivendell. When he heard Gandalf ask him to help find the traces of a man, the Elrond Elven Lord was surprised. But when he heard Gandalf say that the Supreme Ring had been snatched away by a guy who didn't know who it was, he was even more shocked. Gandalf is good. Who can still snatch it from him? He couldn't imagine it. Divination was carried out using elven magic, and as soon as it was over, Elrond's whole person seemed to be frightened. Gandalf stepped forward and asked softly, "What's wrong?" "I saw darkness descend, a night darker than a half-orc, when everything would cease to exist." Aragorn wrinkled his eyebrows. Lord, is that person?" Elrond stood in the moonlight with his back to them. Turning his head sharply, "He will come to the valley, you just need to wait here." He commanded again immediately. "Immediately go and inform all the Elven Lords in Middle-earth to come over." Looking at the dwarves, "If you don't want to be destroyed, you'd better arrange it too." Everyone got up. Looking at the distant valley elf lord, he couldn't believe it. What kind of person would scare such an arrogant elf as them? And Anson and Wanda, who wander far away in the human city, do not know what is happening here. Chapter 218. 3 days later. Almost all the elves who were still living in Middle-earth sent people over, and the dwarves and Gandalf and his party knew that Elrond was not joking. It seems that something has really happened. Aragorn worried. Gandalf, hopefully. The problem was that he didn't get God's will, and he couldn't see anything about the elves' actions at the moment. The person who snatched the Supreme Ring was really that terrifying? The meeting was filled with elves from all over the world. They may not be comparable to the elves who live in the valley, but they are also part of the elves. If nothing else, they will leave Middle-earth in a few years and return to their overseas ancestral lands. Elves have a long lifespan, but once they leave the clan land for a long time, that is, after leaving the range of the World Tree, their power will gradually be lost. It's weird, but once they go back, they can be guaranteed a long life. According to the prophecy, they had planned to evacuate. Unfortunately, Elrond saw something he didn't want to see. "Sir, what exactly did you see?" Gandalf couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Elrond's face was not good looking. "I saw the destruction of the elves." No, it should be the destruction of all races that are not human." "Well?" Elrond ignored Gandalf and looked at the group of elves at the round table and told what he had seen. In addition to the disbelief, there was a feeling of confusion. "Human? Yes, all I can see at the moment is that he is a human, but he can escape from Gandalf, and he should not be a simple human." "Got supernatural power?" Gandalf nodded. "Yes, he and his partner disappeared from my eyes in an instant." As if sensing the elves' thoughts, Gandalf explained, "Not the power of the Supreme Lord of the Rings. It's something else, or magic." It's just that even Gandalf himself is not sure whether this guess is correct. The valley is a valley surrounded by mountains, known as the last home of the elves and a place that humans yearn for in Middle-earth. It is rumored that you can learn a lot about the world here. Anson and Wanda landed on the plateau. "The magic here is more intense, Anson, you find?" "No, it seems that the closer to the sea, the higher the concentration of mana. It should be the relationship of the World Tree." "Let's just walk in like that?" Anson laughed. "Elves do have extraordinary powers, but they are not yet able to do anything to us, and the race represented by pride and purity, rest assured." 7 turns and 8 turns. Walk into a zigzag mountain stream in the mountain path. It's not yet to the center. A cold light quickly flew towards the two from a distance, and an arrow pierced the ground in front of the two, and the tail feathers exposed on the ground on the arrow were still trembling. It can be seen how powerful this arrow is. Anson looked up. Several elves with bows and arrows appeared on the surrounding mountain walls. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" "This is the territory of the elves and cannot be entered without our permission." Examining gaze. That arrogance, Wanda can even see in the light. What to be proud of. She had been practicing witches at Hogwarts for 3.5 years. Good at killing spells, modifying probabilities, and energy attacks. "Anson, Pendra, we are wizards passing by, and we came to the valley to see it." "Sorcerer?" Several elves looked at each other, asking if this was true. After all, in the cognition of Middle-earth, there are very few wizards, but without exception, each of them is very powerful. Thought about it. "Wait a minute, I'll go back and report back, and if we get permission, we'll take you to the Elven Lord of the Valley." Nodded and watched the elf leave. Wanda whispered, "Why don't they set up defensive magic here?" "Is there a possibility they won't?" "Well?" Wanda's eyes widened. "It's possible." Anson shrugged. "That's the way it is." Closing parenthesis. The magic that the elves know, according to his memory, is most likely like using magic to guide the natural power of heaven and earth. It's more like a manifestation of borrowing. It can't directly affect reality with magic like magic in the wizarding world. Inside the valley, the meeting, which was still being discussed very intensely, accompanied by the elf's briefing, everyone was stunned for a moment. "Pendra, are you sure that's what the man said?" "Damn God-eater has appeared again." Elrond finally understood why he foresaw darkness coming. There was once a man also named Pendra who appeared in Middle-earth and even hit their ancestral land of Verona at one point. "If it weren't for the gods who fought off the demon, I am afraid that it is unknown whether they can still exist now." Gandalf made a calm face. If it is the recorded Pendra, then why did he come here? Everyone was stunned. Yes, if it was Pendra, then he should know that this name does not bring him friendship to Middle-earth. On the contrary, he will let those who know eat his heart. But people just appeared like this. It's as if an enemy you've been looking for a long time suddenly appears at your doorstep one day. Elrond, just go out and see, guys. Start sending a message back now and get your people to come. People are connected. Arrogant pulled Gandalf. Is there anything strange about the name Pendra? You just need to know that this represents a demon. Gandalf said meaningfully. The entrance to the glen, the Anson and the two were brought here, and some scenes of the depths of the valley can be seen in the distance, which is indeed beautiful. However, slowly the number of elves around gradually increased. These elves thought they couldn't find it. Unfortunately, under the real eye, there will be a unique magic rule in each person, which is the mark given to them by the world. Surrounded the two densely, until a group of people showed up. One raised her eyebrows. It seems that there is fun. Cheng surrounded the two of them in a clearing, and the elves who were originally hidden around all tightened their bowstrings and waited. An atmosphere of slaughter. Anson, I thought the valley would be a good place, at least not the hospitality. Elrond made a calm face. Indeed. But there will never be demons in the object of elven hospitality. Demon? Anson was stunned. Where is this about? I thought it was because he took the supreme ring. Lifted out. Is it because of them? Seeing it, Gandalf couldn't help but step forward. Sir, robbing other people's things is not a gentleman's behavior. Chapter 220. Look at each other. No one can believe that the scene in front of him can really happen. So funny. Alwyn is not an ordinary elf. It is Elrond's daughter. It is also the girl who Aragorn secretly loves. Provoking her is equivalent to provoking the elves, and a person thing that will definitely be the rule of humans in the future. Inside the valley, the dwarf shouted, what else do you know that we don't? The so-called demons in your mouth. There is a lot of origin. Gandalf also looked at Elrond. He knew a few things about why Pendra was a demon, but definitely not as much as the elves. Cilantral sighed. There was also a man named Pendra who invaded Verona, and God gave us instructions to expel him from him. But we were no rivals. Eventually, God sent down his divine power, and the demon named Pendra disappeared. I didn't expect it to appear again now, but it should not be the one that appeared before. After all, thousands of years have passed. Why did you invade Verona? Hearing Gandalf's words, the crowd reacted. Yes, why invade Verona, and not Middle-earth? If the man named Pendra in Middle-earth also invaded, it would not have left any records on Middle-earth. But it's a pity that even the dwarves, except for the elves, don't know what the three words Pendra mean. Cilantral shook his head. I don't know about this, and the only thing I know is God. That is, it is impossible to determine why people invaded. That is equivalent to saying that you don't even know the details of people, so how to deal with it in the future? Elrond saw what was going on in everyone's minds. I will send someone back to Valinor to inform God that there may be a way. After speaking, he looked sideways at Gandalf. The destruction of the Supreme Ring needs to be brought forward. All the elves may need to return to Verona, and that person will definitely be there if he reappears in the future. Aragorn immediately reluctant. What about Alvin? What can be done? They don't know how people left, and they don't know where they went. And not to mention that they are not necessarily the opponents of that person. The rain of arrows in the sky is nothing at all. Even Cilantral's magic didn't seem to hurt him, so Gandalf didn't need to say more. In the contact of the valley, that person killed at least hundreds of elves as soon as he shot and finished, which were the elite of the valley. It can be seen that people are still very casual. Once they go all out, who knows what more powerful magic the demon will have. Inside the magic tower, several elves tied to the ground surprised the wizards, especially Lily and Snape, although she also thought that Anson's actions were inhumane. She couldn't sway Anson. The magic power in their bodies seems to be decreasing, and besides, it didn't feel like this in Middle-earth. But now it seems to have a decay? Anson took Wanda's words. Wanda's eyes lit up. Not bad, it's decay. In theory, if the elves have been living in Verona, it is estimated that they can live forever. There is the existence of the World Tree, and there is a strong magic power, which keeps the elf's body alive at every moment. This is one of the key reasons why the elves must leave Middle-earth later. But in the wizarding world, the elves are too far away from Verona and the magical World Tree. Arthur hurried inside, still holding a piece of paper in his hand. Sir, the data is available. Anson took a look. The data above is the body data of the elves, and many places are different from humans. To be precise, elves are not the same species as humans. Interesting. Is this a new species that has been artificially created? Although many places are similar to humans, they are very different, and elves are more capable of holding huge amounts of magic than wizards. Unfortunately, they don't use magic. Otherwise, wizards per capita. Anson suddenly reacted. Does this conclusion mean, in other words, the gods who created them didn't want the elves to wield too much power? Has the spell resistance been tested? Arthur's face is not very good looking, and to test the resistance of the spell, he needs to use the spell to cast the elf, and the end can be imagined. It's already been tested, and the data is just a few pages away. At first glance, it really is interesting. Although not as resistant to magic as the Hobbit, it is also higher than that of wizards, and is naturally suitable for natural magic or white magic. Conversely, the damage to elves by magic targeting souls will be multiplied, especially black magic. Closing parenthesis. The successive tests quickly reduced the number of captured elves, and only 3 elves were still alive except for Alwyn. Anson crouched in front of her and looked. Mr. Filch. Young master. Let's use the way we transformed a squib into a wizard and see if she can use magic. Well, be careful not to let her mess around. Filch looked at Alwyn. This is a princess, or the princess of the legendary elves. Of course, I'm happy to help them, young master. Waving his hand, Filch left with the remaining elves. After listening to Lily, Snape and the others' report on the matter of the magic tower, Quirrell arrived. There's nothing wrong with Smaug, right? No, he likes life in the dragon farm, but it says it's better to let it return to Middle-earth if it can. Brow furrowed. How? The longer Smaug said that the longer it is here, the more obvious its strength will decline, and according to it, it will slowly become similar to the dragon in the wizarding world in 10 years at most. Is there a problem with the arrangements in the dragon field? Charlie and Mr. Weasley are sure that a female dragon has been conceived. Well, that's good news. 3 days later, Azkaban underground, Alwyn and his elves are holding wands at Filch, and from time to time they also fire magical energy strikes. Unfortunately, Filch was wearing a dragon skin magic robe, and this energy could not even break the iron armor spell on the dragon skin magic robe. A sinister laugh. Sure enough, it is a unique race, and the magic talent is so strong. You use a black magic. Filch pointed to an elf beside Alwyn. Alwyn hurriedly stopped. Don't listen to him. Once we lose our role, we definitely have no chance to live. However, people's hearts change with the environment. Drill heart curse. A beam of light hit the elf directly. Filch shook his head. Disobedience means that you have no value in existing. Please don't embarrass me. Here, are you just experiments? Chapter 221. As for what will happen to these remaining elves, Anson wasn't interested in knowing, until Filch took out a detailed piece of data and placed it in front of him. Only the so-called elf princess was still alive. Nodded. It is indeed a very good race, and the high level of magical talent is probably not much comparable to many people in the wizarding world. Filch nodded. Compared to the elves, their transformed squibs are like weeds that can be thrown everywhere. The talent and growth limits of the two are not at all on the same order of magnitude. Young master, what do you need to arrange for that elf princess? Anson thought for a moment. Just keep it, maybe it's useful. After all, it's the elf princess. Got it. Filch left, and when he opened the door, he saw Quirrell waiting outside, and the two nodded. There was no conflict between the two in terms of functions. Filch was like a dirty worker, and Quirrell was more like a big butler who needed to do everything. Both had to follow Anson because of something, but I'm afraid even they don't know why they feel more and more that they are so close to Anson. Normal. What's wrong? Anson saw Quirrell come in and looked up and asked. Quirrell put down a piece of data. Hey, when was it discovered? Just a week ago, after completing the unification of the wizarding world. We didn't conduct a census of the wizarding world, and found some unregistered wizards in the second time. This was followed by another sentence. There are quite a few of them. What do you think? Quirrell's face was not very good looking. Young master, the Death Eaters can basically be declared destroyed, while most of the members of the Witch Party are already dead, and the rest cannot turn over the waves. Say it directly. It should be the pureblood family forces of the original wizarding world. It's possible. What do they want to do? Our people discovered that this group of unregistered wizards was intentionally touching moles. Want to change the current landscape through the power of moles? I think, yes. Well, Anson put down what he was holding and pondered, which was unacceptable for him. The stability of the wizarding world is not to be feared of destruction. However, different voices are needed in the wizarding world. First, it can make the wizarding church develop better. Second, you can also see if there are those radishes that are bad, and when the time comes, the mud on the radishes will have to be cleaned up. At least it is much easier to deal with on the bright side than in the dark. You arrange, don't move them first, see how far they can go. Yes. What happened to the goblins who were sent to Middle-earth? Quirrell smiled. According to the wizard we monitored them back. Those goblins are currently building another Gringotts in Middle-earth. However, it does not seem to be going well. Just within the territory of the Shire. Shire? That's Hobbit territory. The territory of a group of gentle little guys. It is somewhat whimsical for goblins to want to accumulate wealth here. However, this is their greedy nature. No idea of expanding outward? It doesn't seem to be at the moment, but when they can't get what they want and have extraordinary power, expansion seems to be their only possibility. Stay tuned. Got it. After speaking, seeing that Quirrell had not left, he looked up at him. Young master, it should be almost time to return, right? Well, the Marvel World side also needs me to deal with it, and you also need to be here, so you don't have to go back with me this time. Quirrell was unwilling, but since Anson had said so, what could he say? Thinking about Hayla, who had been with a young master before, Quirrell was greatly surprised after she became king of Asgard. In the past, This person could only use some extraordinary powers, as well as physical powers. But after becoming queen, Quirrell could feel that as long as people wanted to, it was estimated that one look could kill him, or the effortless kind. He wanted to persuade Anson not to go back. After all, it was too dangerous. Brother Gu has accumulated a dense number of wizards here for decades. No matter who he is, he has to stop eating. However, Anson had a reason to go over. Before returning, Anson also went to see the elven Princess Alwyn, who was locked up in Azkaban. Closing parenthesis. She was well taken care of by the Dementors, at least not dead now. Marvel Universe, Night. Avalon Castle is just like the Wizarding World, full of magic jumping everywhere, and the forest outside the castle is now protected by magic barriers. The fog is shrouded all year round. Wanda jumped onto the couch, finally back, picked up the phone to contact her brother. This time, Anson also brought back the Super Killer and the Big Dad. Most wizards in the Wizarding World have already been trained by them, and now that new wizards no longer use their training, the change in perception is maintained. For a long time, Spencer returned on the latest fighter. Since getting the technology of Wakanda and the technology of the Chitauri in the Button War, their technological level has also grown by leaps and bounds. For now, it is not difficult to see from Spencer's oral account that the changes on this side are more anxious. So, Fury has already determined that there are people from Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. Spencer nodded. Yes, young master, but it is more like that Mr. Pierce himself exposed, according to the information we have received. They will act recently. Anything else? Spencer thought for a moment. Anson laughed. It doesn't seem to be good news. Yes. Didn't we let the Wakandas build an extra cosmic contact point on the home planet of the Dark Elves? Last time the young master said that he hired marauders to deal with the scurry people in the universe. Later, the marauders sent back a message saying that there were a large number of superpowers among the scurry people, and they suffered heavy losses. Oh, 5.7. Anson's eyes lit up. That's interesting. According to his previous memory, it is not difficult to see that although there are superpowers, there are definitely not many of the Skurrus. Unlike most Cosmic Empire civilizations, the Skurrus can get everything about this civilization by simply becoming someone of another civilization and replacing it. There's no need to turn yourself into a superpower. But now it seems to have changed. Is there any specific data? Yes. With a tap of the finger, the artificial intelligence in the castle played back the video sent back by the marauders. Spencer pointed to the appearance of a scurry man in the picture who instantly turned into a giant after dealing with the invasion of marauders. This one looks a lot like the Hulk. Not only the Hulk, but most of the Skurru seem to have the same physique and strength as the American team than normal creatures. Chapter 222. The thing that worried Anson the most still happened. He has been fighting the Skurru all this time. What is the reason for not having a good impression of the Skurrus? That's it. The talent of the Skurru people itself is an extremely heaven-defying ability, and the entire universe is on guard against the Skurrus. Only Fury seems to see the danger inside. Let the Skurru people enter the earth. It can be said that he may not have a choice. After all, he prefers to get help from the Skurrus. It can also be said that this guy is used to walking tight ropes. He thinks he can control any resources in his hands. It's a pity that the Skurru people used to be one of the three major imperial civilizations in the universe, and people are used to being landlords. How can they share the future with you equally? Now, from the information sent back by the marauders, the Skurru have at least got some of what they want. That is, the Avengers, or the genes of the owners of superpowers on Earth. Except for natural talents like Wanda and Stark, the rest may be replicable for the Skurrus. Although people are now interstellar wandering refugees, this does not mean that the number of Skurru people is small. Once these superpowers are all armed with the 19 Skurrus, I am afraid that not many civilizations in the entire universe will be able to withstand their invasion. Just imagine a group of creatures that can transform into individuals in your civilization quietly enter civilization, and you can't find it yet. These people also have powers that ordinary people cannot have. Once this force changes a little in civilization, the collapse of civilization is imminent. Frowning. Young master, they say that the Skurru people are hiding again, and they ask us to increase the amount, otherwise they will not accept our task. Scold. Sneered. It's just that he doesn't have time to deal with the Skurrus. Even if the Skurru has these superpowered replication techniques, he can face the wizards who control a world in his hands. Still not enough to see. Let them go. Now that the marauders have exchanged fire with the Skurrus, it is no longer possible to retreat with their whole body. Look up, go and let Mr. Spencer come. Yes, young master. After a long time, Spencer returned. What did the target do? Spencer shook his head. No. That Baron Teslak is still conducting some kind of experiment in Sokovia, and it should be a lot to gain from looking at their list of supplies. Sokovia? Wanda heard this and looked to this side. Anson nodded. Yes, it's your hometown, Sokovia. Wanda frowned. There is indeed a mysterious place there, and I heard many people say that it seems that someone is doing scientific research inside. Is it Hydra? According to the original plot, if it weren't for Anson bringing the Wanda siblings out, they would still be inspired by Baron Teslak's use of the psychic scepter. What is that guy working on? It seems to be the Chitauri technology left over after the Great War of New York. That thing? Wanda didn't want to believe it. At first, I didn't realize how powerful those technologies were, and they were still cut down as rotten watermelons. Spencer shook his head. No, in fact, Zatori's technology is not as low as we think, and their research in bioengineering is beyond that of Earth civilization. Maybe Baron Teslak still has his own technology. Anson waved his hand. Spencer, young master, are you going to do something to them? At present, the forces to which Baron Teslak belongs have been all monitored by us. Praise to Wakanda. It's really time to do something to them. Are there any movements from the other Hydras? There is not much movement, and the other Hydra branches are not too active, except for this one in S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, then prepare to go down. When the time comes, the Hydra of Baron Teslak will be dealt with, and some accounts should be calculated. Spencer smiled and nodded. He had also been waiting for this day for a long time. When Anson's parents died unexpectedly, he found some clues, but he couldn't stand the thinness of the Pendra family. If something happened to Anson, even if he used the power of his family to avenge Pendra, what was the point? This had to be endured, and even Anson did not say. Now that Anson has wizards and the power beyond this world in his hands, there is no need to worry about the original worries. Chief, we've found something interesting. Taros, the leader of the Skuru people, turned his chair, and there was a strange feeling in his green eyes. We found that the wizards who had been chasing our people had disappeared, and we guessed that they would be making a big move recently, and in addition, we found out a lot of strangers appeared in this area. The Skuru laughed. Coincidentally, it is very similar to the force that has been looking for us. Found the wizard? Closing parenthesis. Yes, it is in the Sokovian area. They seem to be monitoring this place. A small mountain in a basin is marked, but on normal channels, the mountain seems to be the national industry of the Sokovia region, and there is nothing noteworthy. Why should those wizards pay attention here? Say it directly. The subordinate was eager. We have people who enter it and find that this place is controlled by Hydra. Pierce, not the chief, but another 740. What about your opinion? We should be able to cooperate. Cooperate? Talos frowned. Not impossible. Wizards have a natural way of identifying the Skuru as natural enemies, and have even killed and captured many of them over the years. He was in a mess. Some time ago, he was attacked by marauders on the life planet inhabited by some of their clansmen, and if he hadn't arranged it, I am afraid it would have been a disaster. Can you control it? No. Baron Teslak, the main character of this place, seems to have an extremely strong ability, and once exposed, it will not be worth the loss. I think it's best to cooperate openly and honestly, and it doesn't hurt for us to have them deal with those wizards. Okay, you'll go arrange it. Chief, do you need to use superpowered clansmen? Talos thought for a moment. I will arrange not to do anything other than these arrangements. The atmosphere in S.H.I.E.L.D. has been very uncomfortable recently. Understood. Eastern European Rover, Sokovia. Your Excellency, the latest experiment has been completed. The experimental problem has been fully biomechanical modification, and various additions have been added. Can it be compared to the American team? Our technology has surpassed him. Chapter 223. While the three were hanging out, Anson seemed to see someone who made him feel familiar. No, to be precise, it should have been the person who once Spencer gave him about cheap parents who appeared in car accidents. Unfortunately, the picture at that time was too blurry to see who it was. But the figure Anson could not forget. The man who appeared in Sokovia was very similar to the figure in the memory. What's wrong? Wanda followed Anson's line of sight, and a burly man on a motorcycle disappeared into the distance. Pietro, mercenaries? This area is full of mercenaries and various people because of its chaotic relations. Anson shook his head. The person who disappeared just now seems to be the Winter Soldier. That metal arm doesn't have many people in the entire Marvel universe, and it looks a lot like the Winter Soldier he remembers. It's just that how could the Winter Soldier appear here now? Quietly Mimi followed, only to see the Winter Soldier disappear into the city and enter the mountain, and the three did not continue to follow until there was a checkpoint on the mountainside. Jingle bells. The phone rang, and Anson picked it up. Hey, are you sure? Yes, young master. S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury was assassinated and missing, and the probability of death is very low, but our people found that Pierce has launched the Insight program, and the space aircraft carrier has been lifted off. At present, the U.S. team and others are trying to turn off the space plane, and the relevant video is being sent to the young master. 090 turned off the phone, pressed a button on his body, and a projection appeared in front of the three. At this moment, outside the S.H.I.E.L.D. Trickwing building, there are three huge aerospace aircraft carriers in a state of rapid liftoff. Before Anson could continue watching, Pietro's voice pulled him back to reality. What's wrong? Anson, look over there. The three of them themselves are now on the mountainside outside Sokovia, not far from the Hydra base, and under normal circumstances, no one would come here at all. Now there are one after another the sound of motorcycles. Looking in the direction of the sound, several people with different equipment rushed towards them, and without exception, all of them had this metal arm that reflected light in the sun. The Winter Soldier. Are they discovered? Heat induction, browning, the Mull expulsion charm and the illusion charm were useful, but they could not hide the heat source on them. Coming at us? Wonder Fox wondered. Anson, it should be they. It's just some people who have been controlled and brainwashed, and they can be dealt with casually. The two siblings looked at each other and smiled one after another. Pietro nodded and disappeared, while a winter soldier who was speeding up from the front was shot into the air at the same time. If it weren't for his good physical fitness and strong strength, he twisted his body in the air and landed on the ground. I am afraid that ordinary people will die on the spot just by changing this one. An anxious voice came from the headset. Notice, one of the targets disappears, and thermal induction finds that the target has fast-moving powers. Received. One of the winter soldiers replied coldly. Pull out your pistol and feel the changes at every point around you. Suddenly, the pistol thuds, bangs, bangs in the direction of an empty object is a triple shot. Bullets fell on the trunk of the tree, but no figure appeared. At this moment, the rest of the winter soldiers stopped around Anson and wandered to form an encirclement. The muzzle is aimed at the center. Anson casually touched the illusion charm. Look at the camera on the winter soldier. Baron Teslak. Pendra, I really underestimated you. I already knew that I should have killed you, but it's a pity. But when you die, I will find the secret about the Sword of Kings. Die? Anson shook his head helplessly. It's really. The ignorant are fearless. The wand flicked towards the ground, and the tip quickly sent a red flame into the air. Boom! A loud sound spread throughout the mountain forest. In the surrounding forest, which should be quiet, hundreds of wizards wearing black magic robes suddenly appeared, straddling flying brooms. Swish! Quickly flew towards the building on the top of the hill, not getting closer. Together, 500 elite wizards held wands and cast spells on the hilltop building. Boom! Under the loud sound, a light blue light shield appeared outside the mountaintop building, blocking the wands issued by the 500 wizards. Novels. Just go to Felu closing parenthesis go on. The spell continued, and after 3 times in a row, the shield was reducing its protection at a speed visible to the naked eye. The faces of Baron Teslak in the base and Skuru transformed into it were extremely ugly. Teslak turned his head to look at the person next to him who suddenly appeared to find their cooperation. It's time for your people to strike. Of course, Your Excellency, comma. With a wave of his hand, the 10 people who followed jumped out in a roar, and as for whether they could defeat these wizards, to be honest, they didn't know. Teslak's face looked better. Take out those things in the arsenal, whether he is a wizard or a human. If he is hit, he will die. Understood. In the mountains and forests. Wanda just wanted to make a move, but Anson grabbed her arm. How? Anson shook his head. I'll try. Saying that, he handed his wand to Wanda, walked to the winter soldier with his bare hands, and defiantly raised his hand and bent his hand to signal them to attack him first. It can be described as extremely arrogant. However, these winter soldiers were specially created, and even had already worn out human nature and desire. No fear, no fear, no disobedience. There is only one thought in their hearts: kill the target. In addition to the 7 winter soldiers, except for one who was entangled in Pietro, 6 are now beating Anson. Anson remained motionless. Every time the winter soldier's huge metal arm hit him, even the ground on which he was standing would be shaken down by the force. 6 people at the same time. I am afraid that a large truck will be scrapped in an instant. But Anson didn't feel anything, as if he didn't feel anything. There are frequent strange lights in the eyes. The limits of dragons. I'm afraid he is still a little worse now, but it's not much worse, and the ordinary physical means of such a body are useless to him. Not to mention that he is still wearing a dragon skin magic robe, which greatly weakens the power brought by the winter soldier's mechanical arm. Big sense of boredom. Looking up at the winter soldier in front of him, just as he punched over, his arm like a saffron at the bottom of a leaf suddenly pinched his neck out of thin air. Click. In the base, all the Hydra personnel who saw this scene were like morning exams. How could this be? The henchman came to Baron Teslak's side. Baron, or made a gesture of retreat. Teslak was a little unwilling. Wait a minute, what's going on over there with the sought-after team? It's already in a specific location, ready to shoot. Then let them shoot. Chapter 224. The Gunners team is naturally a team transformed with alien weapons. Teslak is well aware of their power, and it can be said that these weapons have surpassed the current Earth technology, unless they are like the Hulk. Otherwise, I am afraid that there will not be much surprise in the end when a shot goes up. In the picture, the gunmen are already waiting around, surrounding Anson and Wanda, and when they hear the order to fire from the headset, they pull the trigger in their hands. Phew, phew, phew. A series of energy rays flew towards Anson and Wanda. In the next second, the picture of the two being beaten into a sieve was not transmitted back, but this seems to be an energy protection technology. The Skuru people standing beside Teslak frowned and said that they knew that wizards had a technology that could protect them, but they didn't expect it to be so popular. Even if the energy gun of the Zitari is worse, it is not something that ordinary means of protection can resist. But the wizard did exactly that, a little. The face sank. Fortunately, the super warriors they brought with them have arrived on the battlefield. One of them roared and turned green and swelled his body towards Anson, his huge palm like a wheel from top to bottom. The huge wind that trapped in the past exploded in the ears like a violent wind. Rumble, boom. There was even some shaking when the palm slapped on the shield condensed by the iron armor spell. However, This scene is even more frightening to those Skuru people with superpowers. Ever since they injected these supergens from Earth, they have believed that they are already belonging to the power at the top of the universe. After all, the growth of the Hulk is here. They were also modified and did not want the original Hulk to lose their minds, despite the difference in strength. But reason has made up for the surprise. But it failed to break the energy passport in front of this person. They will lose their minds. Sen will not. A grab grabbed the Skuru who had injected the Hulk gene, and slammed it high on the ground. In the pit, the green-clad Skuru spat out blood and slumped. Don't wait for him to react. Anson had already taken out his wand, holding the stick in both hands and poking down. Poof! Wanda shook her head. Is it necessary to be so bloody? You are a wizard. Anson. A red chaotic magic energy condensed in his palm, and he threw it directly to the rest of the Hulks who were surrounding them. Skurus. Anson nodded. It seems that they have obtained the genes of everyone in the Avengers, and we may not know more. Wanda frowned. It seems that the one-eyed miscalculation. Can't say miscalculation. Huh? Does this guy have the gene of Thor? It was possible to release lightning. Unfortunately, in the end, it was smashed into a puddle of mud under Anson's casual stick. The spell rained down towards all the surviving people around, and the green light was like the scythe of death in the day, which was terrifying. In less than a minute, Teslak and the Skuru thought that the power that could take Anson was all accounted for here. At this moment, everyone in the base looked at each other. Teslak had quietly walked back. At this moment, a loud rumbling sound came from outside, and the energy passport that had been protected outside the base was shattered by the attack of 500 wizards. People have already driven straight in at this time. I'm afraid it won't be long before you get here, and no one will be able to walk by then. Teslak shouted. Long live Hydra. Turn around and go. Ignoring the subordinates who were still inside to resist the wizard's attack, he left from the secret passage with a few henchmen. The Skuru shook. Let's go too. If you don't go, there is no way. The super soldiers sent by the leader are not his opponents. Hell, withdraw. Where do you want to go? Just as several Skuru wanted to leave, Anson and Wanda didn't know when they had already appeared in the hall. Everyone looked at the two. Anson naturally walked to the highest position to look down, and suddenly someone took out his own gun and fired at Anson. Bang bang. The sound of jingling rings on the body. Frow slightly. Closing parenthesis. Why can't you learn well? Click. After a white light flashed on the wand, the clicking sound spread rapidly in the hall, visible to the naked eye, and in just a few seconds, everyone was strangely frozen into ice, except for those few Skurus. Shiver. My legs couldn't help but tremble. Such a force is no longer what they can imagine. How to resist? Anson's indifferent voice reached their ears again. Why didn't you run? Kill if you want. Wanda controlled the energy to pinch the neck of the person who spoke, and his fingers stood up on the lips. SHHH. The rest couldn't help but take a step back, but the entire hall was covered with ice, and the passage where Teslak had escaped had disappeared. And where can you go? Anson walked up to a few people and looked at them. It seems that these few do not have any superpowers. In this way, the Skuru people do not seem to be able to completely transform their race. Or is it because of the limitation of raw materials? The raw material is naturally the blood sample of the Avengers. The Avengers are under fury, and the Skuru may be able to slowly save some blood samples from them, but they will definitely not say that they will get a large amount of blood samples. Avengers is also not vegetarian. Is good news. The mind gem hanging on his chest lit up. Tell me, where is Daros? The leader is within shield, and there are 3 identities that can be changed at any time, and I don't know if there are others. This superpower of yours was extracted from the blood sample of the Avengers? Yes, but the specific technique is only known to the chief. After Anson's interrogation, Spencer walked in with someone outside. The Pendra security personnel behind him were holding on to the so-called Baron Teslak, and several of them even had their dragon skin magic robes damaged. Spencer, this guy has the ability to poison people, and I guess if he dies, some kind of virus in his body will spread. Teslak looked up at Anson fiercely. Wizard? Ha ha ha. What I guessed was indeed correct. There must be extraordinary power in the Pendra family, but alas, Spencer punched him in the head. You should be afraid. Teslak sneered. I'm afraid you can't make me afraid. Wanda said, death is not the end, especially in front of a wizard who can play with your soul. Teslak seemed to have thought of something, and set off Anson's smiling face. Chapter 225. Looking at the man in front of him, Anson had a very unexpected feeling, although Teslak also had extraordinary powers. Of course, Teslak is not the one who knows nothing in the movie, and this guy himself is a Hydra who survived the Red Skull era. Much older than Fury and Black Widow. It is impossible to have no ability, and the ability he has mastered is a special ability called Death Spores. It not only enhanced his physical body and lifespan, but also gave him great strength and special toxicity. If he were killed here, I am afraid that the entire town of Sokovia below the mountain would die because the virus spread in the air. A walking pathogen. However, this kind of power looks like that. Spencer and a few wizards were able to capture him back, and to put it bluntly, wizard's magic was still too restrained in physical means. It must be so easy to change to someone else's 730. Anson sat in the chair that Spencer had brought over, and Teslak knelt in front of him. I'm curious why you wanted to kill my parents in the first place. Silent. Anson raised his eyebrows, and the mind gem on his chest flickered. Tell me. Because of the legend of the Sword of Kings and the Archmage Merlin. The Red Skull obtained the legendary Odin artifact from a church in Roba, Northern Europe, and I think the Pendra family should also have this type of item. It's not hard to understand. When he first found out this one, Anson also thought so, but unfortunately, the Sword of the King was not in the hands of his parents at all. Otherwise, maybe it is really possible for him to get some unexpected gains. Who knows this information besides you? The information of each branch of Hydra is basically not public, and no one knows the information of the Pendra family. Head down. It was a surprise. Are all the materials you studied at this base? Yes. Waving his hand, Spencer arranged for someone to download all the technology here, although it didn't have much effect, but it was guaranteed that it would be used in the future. Turn to look at this one. The eternal flame on the wand flew down and wrapped Teslak's whole body, crackling and burning, not wanting to escape any trace of the virus. Wizard, young master, all the Hydra and Skuru have been cleaned up. But we have found something outside. On the computer that was carried over, a guy who had long been identified as missing appeared. Fury. Why did he get here? It's not clear. According to the information our people have received, the people who Hydra has hidden inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Since he disappeared, and he really shouldn't have been here. Bring it in. Outside. Pietro, who received the news in the headset, quickly disappeared after kicking the Winter Soldier at his feet. Fury, who was hidden in the woods, could not see anything in the base on the mountain for a long time, thinking that something might be wrong inside, and wanted to leave, but this was the only way to find Anson. Can only wait here. Cool. The arm quickly reached for the pistol that he put on his waist and turned around as a shot. Bang. While after a crisp sound, the bullet fell from the dragon skin magic robe on Pietro's body, and this level of attack did not even activate the iron armor spell attached to the magic robe. Pietro tilted his head. You have a good sense of humor. Fury. I know you. The child Anson took from here, Wanda's brother? Pietro shrugged. The process may be a little uncomfortable, but trust me, it will be fine soon. What? Yes, Sue. Fury disappeared into the woods. Probably not even a second before Fury opened his eyes. In front of him sat the guy he had been looking for, Anson, Pendra. But why was he looking at the black ash on the ground? Swallowed his saliva. The wizard is enough for him, and now there is another supernatural who can move at high speed. Hell, how far is it from the mountainside to the base? At least a few kilometers are there. But how long did it take for them to appear here? Definitely not more than a second. This may not be the limit for this person. My God! Anson reluctantly shouted. Closing parenthesis. Anson turned his head to look at him, snapped his fingers, and several Skuru corpses floated in and landed at his feet. Fury's pupils constricted. How so? Are you wondering why they're here? Fury shook his head. It's not surprising that you've been arresting them, I think. Yes, but what if they have powers? What? Fury jerked his head. This is impossible. The leader of the Skuru told me that they do not have any powers. This Skuru has abilities similar to those of the Hulk, Anson said, pointing to one of the corpses. This is Team America's. This is Thor. This is, well, it should be regarded as some kind of special energy that can emit concussive powers. One by one, they are basically not normal Skuru, all with extraordinary power. Rise. I'm curious, when you used the Skuru, did you think that they were also using you, which seems to be contrary to your ideas? That's how you protect the planet, how you protect humanity. Fury was dumbfounded. Although he was reluctant to believe it, with what he knew about the Skurus, they could get their hands on the genes of the Hulk and the Avengers. Maybe there is some kind of technology in the Skuru people that can replicate this. Are you still trying to get these abilities through the Skurus? Tut. Anson smacked his lips. Sure enough, I can't learn well. Fury shook his head in embarrassment. Of course not. I don't believe them, but this time I didn't come to you for this matter. Anson, the Earth needs your help. Tell me about it. Directly saying everything he knew was nothing more than something that Pierce planned to launch the Insight Plan. What can I get? Fury wrinkled his brows, pondering what else he could trade with Anson for 4.8. I can tell you about the location and identity of the Skuru people I know. Anson looked slightly sideways. What good is it for him to do this? No. This guy is trying to take his own hand and knock the Skuru. So, you still want to get powers through the Skurus? Fury is gone. Spencer, young master, why don't you just use magic to get the information in his head? I think this is the fastest drunkenness for us. This guy looks like a person who is not intelligent and crazy. People want to control the world, but they never think that the world has never been controlled by anyone. What happened to Dr. Helen Zhao? The research has been successful, the cradle of regeneration is excellent, but recently she seems to be very close to Stark. Scold.